Welcome to the I Love Mondays podcast week in review.
I love Mondays with Mike Heller.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed bunker in the Badger State. This is I Love Mondays with Mike Heller. Powered by determination and a little bit of duct tape. Here's your host, Mike Heller.
And Nags, what a treat it is to have you here and to have you say yes on the ask. Thank you for spending time with me.
Oh, Mike, I really appreciate it. In fact, I've been sitting over here thinking, Mike's been doing this I Love Mondays thing for a long time now. I'm somewhat insulted that I haven't been asked to be on. So it was a very happy message to receive.
The other time I reached out, I think you were in New Orleans.
I was in New Orleans.
Yourself very
that
much.
Is correct. Yes.
Yeah. How was that? Is that a place you enjoy?
I love it. My girlfriend is from New Orleans, so we go back about once a year, maybe twice if we're lucky. Yeah. And we were down there for Jazz Fest, and it was outstanding. Yeah. Absolutely. Highly recommend it if you haven't been.
Yeah, we just got back from the Bourbon Trail. I don't know if you're a drinker of the brown, but
I've been known to, enjoy a tipple here or there. Yeah,
we went down with a group from our wine and bourbon bar in Wanakee called Red and White Wine and Bourbon Bar. We took a group of 21 all together down on a coach bus to Louisville, and then went to Frankfurt and Bardstown and stopped at a place called The Hard Truth in Nashville, Indiana, which is a really cool place. We had a blast.
That sounds like a trip.
Really
good time.
Really good time. I highly recommend that tour. And it's not something we've done before. All right. So let me ask you, we're just tomorrow, and it's not literally tomorrow, but you know what I mean. Figuratively speaking, training camp starts tomorrow, the end of the month here for the Green Bay Packers. And I'm curious about a number of things, but mostly about starting with guys coming back from injury. So if we're talking about that, how do these players impact, and we'll go one at a time, how Green Bay can be back to a division winner instead of a seventh seed for a fourth straight year? That's where they're living right now.
Yes, sir.
Or NFC championship contender. Let's start with Tucker Kraft. How critical and how much is his return to full speed impactful on what they're trying to get done?
Well, it's interesting because we did see he was playing at such a high level, right? Yeah. When you did go down there in that game against Carolina, but it also is interesting how it did seemingly take them a bit to find a way of working on offense without him. And I do remember lots of people, the season's over and the offense is done. And certainly that wasn't the case, right? They did find a way of working. It did take a couple weeks, but they found a way of working without him. But it's exponentially more explosive with him, and mostly because of his ability after the catch. Yeah, there's no denying that when Jordan Love is in trouble or he knows he's got to get rid of the football, he is looking for Tucker Kraft, and when he does, good things happen. So certainly, the kind of margin for error is a lot greater when you've got Tucker Kraft as a safety valve.
Yeah.
I think they can still, like I said, operate on offense and score points and put up numbers. There's no doubt about that. I think as long as Jordan Love is upright, that's going to happen. But they're so much more explosive. They're so much more dangerous. And you give defensive coordinators just multiple different types of headaches having to figure out how you are going to utilize Tucker Kraft. So, obviously you want all your best players, but he certainly makes their offense 10 times more dynamic just by his presence on the field.
Nags, I think for years now, we've seen how impactful a violent mismatch of a tight end can make it for defenses, whether that was Gronk or you can go back to Tony Gonzalez. You can go anywhere and look at that tight end position. And when that guy is special, their offense changes because defensive coordinators don't know what to do. Linebackers, even strong safeties have a hard time with that big, physical, violent tight end, and that's what Kraft is, and hopefully he comes back to. My second guy is also on offense. I wanted to stay offense first. So Zach Tom, to me, is the other guy, and he might be, that linchpin that if he's good, everything's good, and if he's not, it creates a whole set of domino problems for that offensive line. Would you agree on the Zach Tom importance?
Absolutely. In fact, it's interesting you mentioned him because a lot of people have somewhat kind of forgotten the fact that he missed those last five games, the same 5 games that Micah Parsons missed, and everyone attributes the 5-game slide. Oh, they lost Micah Parsons. It all went to hell in a handbasket, which is obviously especially true on the defensive side of the ball. But Zach Tom, more important than Tucker Kraft in my mind, because again, as long as you've got protection for Jordan Love, he's going to tear you apart on the back end, right? There's zero doubt that if you can protect Jordan, he is going to find where the open man, where the ball should go, etc. And Zach Tom is such a huge component in that regard. And as you say, it's such a kind of trickle-down effect, a knock-on effect when he does go out of the lineup. And we saw it so many times last year where even at the beginning of a game where he's there to start, all of a sudden he's down. The Cleveland game comes immediately to mind when he lasts one play, and then everybody's out of position and everyone's kind of scrambling. He is a set it and forget it right tackle, which is very rare. Don't look any further than the game in Detroit last year where they're legit having him erase Hutchinson, one of the best pass rushers in the game. They're able to put Zach Tom out there on an island and then deal with everything else with, slide protection, a back chipping, whatever else they want to do, because they know they can set it and forget it with Zach Tom. He is, I think, the most important as far as offensively. All the guys that they need to have back, especially week 1, Minnesota, everything we know they like to throw at you from a defensive standpoint. Zach Tom is the most important component.
And isn't it interesting without a left-handed quarterback that your best offensive lineman is your right tackle? And it leads to the question that Jordan Morgan is installed as your lead offensive lineman. Left tackle is your best player. I think Zach Tom's their best lineman, but Jordan Morgan's going to be on the left side. What's your worry factor? Any sleepless going to bed not thinking of Morgan on the left edge?
I have a long-standing response to this. The only thing I worry about is my children. I don't worry about the Packers too much. But when it comes to Jordan Morgan, you're not wrong as far as we've certainly seen him bounce around the line so far in his career, and it hasn't ever looked 100%. It hasn't looked like, oh, that's a future all-pro. I will say there have certainly been stretches where he's looked promising. There's certainly been stretches where it looks a little less than promising. So I don't doubt for a moment that the guy we're going to see at left tackle is going to be the guy we saw at left tackle last summer when Rasheed Walker went down with injury, and he looked pretty darn good. Now, doing it for 10, 12 days in camp is a whole different world than doing it as the starter week 1 and going 16, 17, 18 games. I think, he's going to most likely be a hell of a lot more comfortable there. He was drafted as a left tackle. He played a boatload of left tackle in college, and then he's gotten to the pros, and they've used him pretty much everywhere but. So I don't doubt for a moment that they're going to be, a hiccup here or there as he kind of settles in. But I do also think that he's going to be a pretty significant upgrade over what Rasheed Walker gave them last year. Walker had a really rough season, and I was a bit surprised that they never made the switch outright in season. Although I know because Zach went down, they needed to use, Morgan and other guys over there at right tackle. But I do think, again, he is going to be an improvement over what they had last year. And last year, even with really inconsistent offensive line play, they were still a top 10 offense in most metrics. So I think Jordan's he's going to take his lumps at time as a first-time starter there at left, but he should be an upgrade over what they've had recently.
He's Aaron Nagler of Cheesehead TV. Camera switch here when I ask you about Josh Jacobs. I don't know that we know. It is the courts can be quiet, and that's where they are right now. We don't cover the courts. I'm sure that you would prefer not to cover the legal side of what we talk about.
Unfortunate part of the biz, right?
But he's incredibly important to what they do, and there isn't really an answer right now, is there?
Not really. I mean, I think it feels like we're past hold our breath time. Like if something were to or was going to shake out from this, I think it would have. But like you say, you never really know. But I had a couple guys online joking about, the Packers when Josh Jacobs appeared on the top 100, the NFL's top 100 that they're rolling out here this month. The Packers kind of went to town, video, social, all that stuff. And I don't think they would have done that if they had felt any kind of trepidation. Obviously you acknowledge it, maybe put out a tweet, but they, put out packages of stuff. So I suspect the Packers are operating under the assumption that maybe not in the clear, but nothing's going to happen to keep them off the field in 2026.
All right, let's switch on to the defensive side. And I'm not going to begin with the obvious. I'm going to begin with Devontae Wyatt because I think that his return to form and his impact on what they're going to do defensively probably won't get talked about a ton, but I think it's way near the top of the list.
Without question. I mean, you saw how effective he was with Micah in the lineup, and it really, really hampered them losing both of those guys down the stretch last year for obvious reasons. But I also think, given what they're going to try to be, implementing a new defense, trying to get to the passer without Micah Parsons for most likely the first half of the season, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think there's no question that you pair him with Hargrave and you could be cooking with gas on passing downs. Now, you also got to eat your vegetables. You got to stop the run. I think Wyatt's probably in a better spot in that regard than Hargrave is at this point in their careers. But yeah, there's little doubt that they're going to need his presence in the middle. I'm not going to say a huge drop off, but it's certainly a step back when you look at everyone else they've got, unless you get some kind of huge step forward from a guy like maybe Warren Brinson or Nazir Stackhouse. And even then, I think you're only counting on those guys on early downs, most likely. I mean, when you get to the money downs, we want to get pressure up the middle in the lap of the quarterback. Devontae Wyatt's your guy. And if you pair him with Hargrave, who's still got that ability to get to the quarterback, you could really be cooking there, but he's got to be on the field. And I know at Locker Cleanout in January, he talked about, he would most likely be ready by the start of camp. He was on the sideline rehabbing throughout the entirety of the offseason program. I know, like, as far as the reporting and everything that's been talked about, it sounds like he should be good to go week 1, but you know how it is. Nothing's a given.
Yeah.
I suspect he'll probably come back and start on PUP, camp PUP, because that's how the Packers operate. They're going to take it as slowly as possible. But man, he needs to be out there week 1 for them to really have a shot there in Minnesota.
Nags, I mentioned you did Micah Parsons yet. He's going to be the headline stealer on a guy returning from an injury. That injury is late last year, so we think of late October. Fans are going to be impatient, but I don't know that the Packers can afford to be impatient. They're going to have to, be cautious on this. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Absolutely. And I keep going back to something that David Bakhtiari said when I interviewed him about his what ended up being career-ending injury. He said when he was talking to Doc McKenzie, now obviously there's a different doc in charge now, but he said the Packers' philosophy is we don't want you back for 5 games. We want you back for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I do not doubt for a moment that is how they're looking at Micah Parsons, right? You make that kind of investment, what they gave up to get him, you don't want to rush him back. And I've had people kind of in my mentions and in my chats talking about, well, if their record is this or if they're like this in the division, none of that is going to have a bearing on how and when they bring him back. And it's funny because I was doing a Q&A on Twitter the other night and someone said, what week do you think he'll be back? And I said, week 12. And everyone freaked out and like, oh my God, it's a disaster, whatever. And I said, no, operate in your mind like it's week 12 so that if and when he comes back earlier than week 12, you can be excited rather than, as you said, being impatient about when's he coming back.
Yeah. And they're going to have to, so it's not the same, but they're going to have to tread water a little bit without him. That doesn't mean that I want them to be 4-4, 8 games in. Hopefully they're better than that. Yeah. But the Brewers had to tread water without Yelich and Churio and Woodruff for the first
early
month.
In the year, right?
Yeah, and they did pretty well with that. No Vaughn, I think that's a little bit of what Green Bay has to do before you get Micah Parsons back. Now, it doesn't necessarily work the same way, but I'm also curious, when we look at the big picture of this team, there's an 8-year barrier historically for head coaches who haven't gotten home in their first 7, being to a Super Bowl. What's your view of where Green Bay went with the extension and Matt LaFleur's ability to get his team home to a Super Bowl after now he's had 7 full seasons?
Yeah, there's little doubt that it's fighting against history, right? I think John Madden's the only guy who's ever done it. So certainly that's a historical precedent that you don't love to embrace, but there it is. So let's go make history, right? I think I understand Ed Policy's, statements, both with the media and then with us on Cheesehead TV, where he talked about his implicit trust in Matt LaFleur and how after the meltdown in Chicago and everyone's calling for Matt's head, and Ed said it was never going to be about that one game, no matter how badly it went. He's certainly seen the work that Matt has done as far as not just kind of turning things around after Mike McCarthy was fired and Aaron Rodgers was in his greatest form to helping coach him up to 2 more MVPs, right? And they did get to the doorstep of a Super Bowl, to then ripping that Band-Aid off and going super young, younger than I think we've seen in Green Bay in quite some time. 3 years in a row, youngest team in the league. Yeah. And you've brought along Jordan Love, the game's most important position at quarterback, with also the work he did with Malik Willis. I understand that people will look at certain decisions and play calls and things like that, but man, great coaches are great teachers. And it's clear that at least offensively, Matt is a great teacher. And yes, he's got to find a defensive counterpart. Hopefully he's done that with Gannon. But my thing has always been, I understand the idea of letting Matt finish the job, right?
Yeah.
You went super young. You went and got a brand new starting quarterback that he built up, and they have formed this continuity on offense at this point with a core of guys that they have identified and they have paid, whether it is Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, they'll undoubtedly pay Tucker Kraft, and you've got Jordan Love, who's got all these years in your system. Let him go finish the job. Whatever the length of the contract is, we don't know. It's not public. There's been no reporting on it. But Ed did say, this is not just a bridge contract. I believe in Matt LaFleur. What other choice do you have other than to root against your head coach, which is alien to me, right? So I root for Matt to make history, essentially, and join John Madden in that club.
If we life DVR'd it and we went back to the week and a half after the Bears playoff loss, did you think that LaFleur was going to be retained? Did you think he was?
I did. It's funny you say that, because I tweeted something out the week before that game, because everyone was talking about he's got to win, they got to do this, they got to do that. And I just said, man, all of you just need to go outside or go read Dickens or do something, because it's just not how the Packers operate as an organization. Everyone's trying to project what they feel onto Ed policy. Ed's been in the building for a long time now. He knows what the deal is in Green Bay. So I said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then after that game in particular, I was flooded. That tweet was flooded with people. Are you sure? No, I was pretty sure. And would I have been shocked if the trigger would have been pulled? Maybe not shocked. I've been a bit surprised. But as far as retaining him, that didn't surprise me at all. I was what I expected them to do. It's what they did. Again, they value the continuity. Certainly, again, LaFleur's fighting against history here. But man, he is a very talented coach with a very talented roster. Again, he's got to get it right on defense. Hopefully Gannon is that, part of the equation, but there's little doubt they'll be in the mix. They've got to get a little bit more luck health-wise.
Yeah.
But they should be right there. No doubt.
Next, I want to get back into Packers specific stuff here in a minute, but let me ask you about Cheesehead TV and why is it? I mean, I have my own theories on this, and there's a huge appetite, right? Yeah, I mean, you've lived in that world. Why has it worked? Why is it that what you guys have done has worked so well, and you've got such a tremendous following?
It's a good question, and it's something I do get asked about every once in a while. And I'll say it's not, I don't think, anything we've done specifically. As much as I'd love to say we've been ahead of the curve as far as what we've decided, avenues we've decided to go down or anything like that. But some of it is just stubbornness. When we started, I'm looking at I have a framed piece on my wall here from the Green Bay Press Gazette back in the day, back in 2009. They did a piece on us about how we were, the guys on the internet, fans on the internet, which was a very kind of new thing back in 2007 when we started. We had so many people that we were maybe not competing with, but we're in the same kind of avenue we were going down. And they all one by one just kind of stopped doing it. We just kept going. We, figured ultimately it's about Corey and I having a very, very long friendship. And the idea that I wouldn't be doing this, it would feel very, very weird, which is kind of what happened, because when I was on the beat, I wasn't allowed to do Cheesehead TV. Gannett wouldn't allow me to. And that was since 2007, that was the only couple of years where I didn't. And it felt very odd. So I suspect, we'll still be doing it when I'm in an old folks home and he's probably living in a retirement place in Green Bay somewhere. And we'll still be on a Zoom call arguing about the Packers.
Well, give me a sense of, and our viewers, a sense of you and Corey, your philosophy. like I look at it from the outside in and think smart fans, really passionate fans. So we do a Tuesday show here on my daily podcast that I call Superfan Tuesday. And I've got two guys, Jeff Vilker and Courtney Corning, that I rotate through. And the reason I do it is because A, they're super passionate, but B, they're mostly smart. And not always, but they're mostly smart.
Right.
So I look at you guys and go, okay, start with the fandom. I mean, you're never going to hide from the idea that you're a fan. And if you watch a game, you see your fandom.
Hard to miss.
Yeah. But you also have to be smart, right? I mean, you can't just be the super passionate fan that doesn't think through the thoughts that they're going to put out there. Does that encapsulate a little bit of what your philosophy is?
I think you're touching on it a little bit, but I will say it's never been that thought out, right? It's just the personalities that are involved. Like Corey and I are both, like you say, passionate fans. Corey is not interested in finding out like who that third guy on the practice squad is, right? Whereas I am, and I always have been. He makes fun of me for it, right? I will say though, like it's funny over the years, it's somewhat I've lessened a little bit in that regard, just because, man, and this you talk about a philosophy. Our philosophy is don't make it homework. Right? Like I'm a fan, I'm having fun. I want to be informed. There's no doubt about it. But man, the way the internet has just diced things up and really gone hyper niche with some of the coverage as far as whether it's, the analytics of the thing or the obsession with contracts and what guys are making and all what the cap ramifications might be for a signing or a cut or whatever. That feels like homework to me. So I want to be informed, obviously, but yeah, I think we try for our viewers not to make it homework. Like it's always been about, and one of the greatest compliments I've ever received is someone emailed me last year and said, what's amazing is that when I watch your content, it just feels like I'm with a buddy at the bar, which is the whole point.
That's the win.
If you can make it feel like that, even with something as clunky as the internet, right? If you can make it just feel like you're hanging out with a guy that you love and you love the Packers together and you're just hanging out, that's the whole point. And that's to me, that's the whole reason we do it. As far as that connection with fans that feel the same way about the Packers we do, if we can achieve that, everything else is gravy.
But it's interesting to me that you have a journalism background and
background. I mean, ish. Right, I started plunking away at the keyboard back in the day, and then suddenly Gannett wanted to hire me because we were doing social and video, and they weren't, and they needed it, and that's why they hired me.
One of the things I always found interesting isn't even I'm searching for the right word. With people that I have a great deal of respect and have worked either with or around, who don't have the fan in them, like they're not bothered when the team loses. They just writing a story, and I'm still bothered. Like it's still, hey, I get a little extra joy when the Brewers are playing good. I get a little extra when the Packers don't win a game.
Right.
You guys, I mean, that's part and parcel to your daily life.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse because it does feed the passion that then I share with other fans and our viewers, and that's certainly a positive, right? But I'll tell you what, it absolutely ruins my week when they lose, and that will, I don't think, ever go away to the fact where my girlfriend will be like, okay, I'm just going to stay away from you on Monday after the Packers lose on a Sunday. It's just like, because I'm just in a dour mood. So, man, that was the way it was when I was 5. That's the way it is when I'm 50. It's going to be the way it is when I'm 75. I can't turn that off.
Yeah, I've never been able to turn it off. And there are people who are really good in our business, and people I have a ton of respect for.
I had to pretend to do it when I was on the beat.
Yeah.
I brought that classical actor training right to the fore. I had to pretend like I wasn't bothered. It was great.
Yeah. So how often are you acting when you're on Cheesehead TV? I mean, it is your background.
My standard joke is that I use my degree every day because I'm acting like I know what I'm talking about. It's look, I've read a lot, I've studied a lot, I've gone to coaches clinics. I like to think I know just a touch about football, not a ton, but I know a little bit, probably a little bit more than your average non-geek, right? But I don't pretend to be an expert. Like I understand, and the funny part is like the more I do this, the more I understand how little I know. I've told
Sure.
the story on Cheesehead TV before, but there was a coaches clinic that I kind of attended online, a cool clinic with Adam Stenovich, who was then the offensive line coach for the Packers, now obviously the offensive coordinator. And he was breaking down film from a game in Indianapolis. David Bakhtiari was at left tackle, and I cannot remember who was at left guard, but the guard was a rookie, and he was next to Bakhtiari, who at that point was very established. And he was breaking down one rep for about 20 minutes, just pointing out that first step and the difference between the two and how the finite technique that was involved about why this was sloppy and this was pinpoint, blah, blah, blah. And I had been doing this now at that point for a good 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, oh, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. So, like, that has really informed how I've somewhat tried to step back, and especially when it's film breakdown stuff. If there's a Jeff Schwartz out there, a former lineman, NFL, who played for the Panthers and the Giants, whatever, he's breaking down offensive line play, I'll pay attention, right? Or some of the wide receiver stuff or defensive back stuff by the pros and guys who've coached in the league, I'll pay attention to that.
Right.
But when it comes to so much of the, I guess, hobbyists, as it were, I don't want to contribute that way anymore, because like I said, I got to a point where I was very sure that I knew a lot about football until that moment when I was like, oh, I don't know very much at all.
You probably answer this question a lot, so I apologize for going down a familiar road. But how has the relationship with the Packers evolved? Right? Because originally you have to be looked at as an internet. And listen, pull back the curtain. Now that I'm a podcaster and I don't work for iHeart or one of the radio groups, I'm also not credentialed.
Yep.
Like I can't go inside the fence line at training camp.
Yep.
And I asked about even training camp, not games.
Right.
And so I'm on the outside. But your relationship with Cheesehead TV, I assume, has evolved. Has it, with the Green Bay Packers proper?
It has and it hasn't. What's funny is that, back in the day, we were banging out copy at the ice cream parlor there at Lambeau Field, which is no longer there, but that's where I would do all my blog posting after a training camp practice, right? Now I get in because of our affiliation with the radio station. And back in the day, I got in obviously because I was on the beat. But the moment I would be just back to being just Cheesehead TV, I'd be sitting on the outside looking in. So in that regard, like as far as like credentialing and things like that, that hasn't changed too much. But what is interesting and what is fun is to hear from people inside 1265 Lombardi who have followed Cheesehead TV, who do support Cheesehead TV, who do like what we do. And then buttress that against some of the people in 1265 who don't like what we're doing and are not fans of what we're creating. And it's fun to watch that push and pull. But I will say that it feels like there are more people who appreciate it than don't. It's just the people who don't have the ability to make our life hell. Everyone.
Sure. And I imagine, I know this sort of firsthand that they don't miss a beat. I mean, if you violate one of the rules, if you use a logo, if you do something that you're not licensed to do, it's gonna come back, right?
Oh yeah, they look at everything. They've got people looking at everything. So we've had, especially with our merch, we've had a lot of those questions, a lot of those conversations, and there are things we've pushed back on. But for the most part, if we skirt the line, so to speak, they'll give us an email and we'll say, okay, fine, well, you understand. But we're always trying to push the envelope. Like, what's the point of hanging on this earth if I'm not gonna like at least try and like push forward a little bit and have a little fun and skirt the line a little bit? I mean, that's part of the game. That's what.
So I've been talking on occasion during the Brewers season. I've had David Kaplan from Chicago on ESPN 1000 there, and I said to him, and I think you totally agree with this, I don't know that the rivalry here has ever been better. And there have been some great times in the rivalry between Wisconsin, Green Bay, and Milwaukee and Chicago. The Hallis years, Lombardi years, Forrest Gregg and Mike Ditka. Ooh. But when you combine both of them, Brewers and Cubs playing in a 163 a few years back, playing in the second round of the playoffs this last year, being in the same division, and now Packers, Bears, because for a long time it wasn't a rivalry. The Bears sucked.
Yeah.
But right now, isn't it about awesome I mean, isn't this about as good as it gets?
I mean, it's as hot as it's ever been, right?
Yeah.
As far as like maybe the tensions between the fan bases.
Sure.
And yes, the clubs themselves actually both being good at the same time, which has rarely happened. I will say, though, it is funny watching these Chicago fans because they don't know how to act. They don't know how to deal with success. You know, you won a couple games and now you think you're the king of the world. Like, great, have it. Especially after that playoff meltdown, I would be crowing. I get it. But it is telling that you can make a comment online about Jordan Love or about Christian Yelich or anybody affiliated with any Milwaukee Green Bay team, right? And you are instantly bombarded with Chicago fans. What's up, little brother? You're not having enough good times down there in Chicago with your teams. You got to come into our comment section. Like, just when the teams play each other, I get it. You chirp at each other, but man, don't let us live in your head rent free. At least charge rent. You know, it's like it's just interesting to see little brother like finally puff out his chest a little bit.
Well, then let me go to the last little brother, big brother concept, and I don't know where it is. Compare and contrast in your world what they have in Caleb Williams and what we have in Jordan Love. And let me start it by doing this. I did this sort of experiment. If I'm buying a 3 to 5 year stock and I'm 60, I'm where I am in life, I'm buying Jordan Love. If I'm buying a 3 to 5 year stock and I'm 37, I'm probably buying Caleb. That's how I live and look at these two quarterbacks. How do you compare and contrast what they are?
Well, I think Jordan Love's a better quarterback right now. I think Caleb Williams is undoubtedly a more electric playmaker. You can't deny what he's done, especially at the end of these games last year. A couple of throws in the postseason that were just out of this world. But you also can't deny how inconsistent he's been. Correct. And that's something that you cannot build around. You've got to improve in that regard. And you've seen that improvement from Jordan Love through those first 4 or 5 games as a starter where people were writing articles about how the Packers were going to have to take a quarterback in the top 10 because they were going to be terrible, you know, to the improvement where we saw through last year. He is the more consistent quarterback. He's the better quarterback overall. But that doesn't mean that Caleb Williams can't become more consistent, become a better quarterback, right? I think the ability that Jordan Love has shown to operate the offense at the highest of levels, and he should be getting even more control over the offense as it goes along, that will make him more potent long-term. Now, that, again, doesn't dismiss the possibility that Caleb could become something a little bit more consistent and just a better overall quarterback, especially with Ben Johnson as his coach. Like, as frustrating as that man makes me, as much as I hate what the whole him and Matt LaFleur thing and how overblown that got, he's a hell of a coach. And he is a hell of an offensive coach and a really good play caller. So if he and Caleb are joined at the hip for the next 5, 8, 9, 10 years, that's going to be a problem for the Green Bay Packers. Like, that's not, I don't suspect that that's going to get worse, right? I think they found a really good way of working last year. You got to expect that's going to improve here these next couple of years. Yeah, and I think anytime we talked about great quarterbacks in the NFL, you'd be making a mistake if you didn't attach them to their coach. Usually, right? Mahomes and Andy Reid, they're together. Belichick and Brady were together. Even if Bill wasn't an offensive-minded genius, you know, you talk about Favre and Holmgren, and absolutely, all of them are paired. You seldom find this great quarterback who worked with 6 different coaches. I mean, it doesn't work. Part of the component about why they've kept Matt LaFleur around, right? Like, I understand, again, some of the misgivings, but you cannot deny the work he's done with Jordan Love. Like, he has formed and kind of brought him along and made him a really, really good quarterback on the precipice of being great. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating exercise tracking those two over the course of the next 5 years or so. Yeah, no doubt. Hey, this is a blast for me. I said off the top, I appreciate that you say yes. This is a fun visit, and I hope we get to do it on a somewhat regular as we get through this season. Absolutely, man. Just let me know. Reach out, and I'll be here. I love what you do, and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me, Mike. And that is their columnist, Jim Polzine, who I add into the show. Jimmy, how are you?
Great, Mike. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for jumping in and doing this. You know, I saw you. We all were together last week when Sean Eichhorst was introduced as Wisconsin's newest athletic director. Run me through your reaction, or those who haven't read your column, on that decision and your reaction to it, and maybe what it lends to what the future, immediate, long-term might look like here.
Yeah, so it's funny because it's been kind of a runway, I would say. You hear the news that Sean was hired, and I think my initial reaction was that I didn't know how to react. I really didn't. I kind of was right down in the middle, and I hate that as someone who's supposed to have a pretty strong opinion.
Yeah.
I really struggled with that column the first day because I didn't have a strong opinion. I certainly wasn't. I didn't hate it, and I didn't love it. I just kind of thought, I needed to know more, and certainly the Nebraska stuff jumps out as kind of the one thing that you kind of want to dig into more. And then because this has been kind of a slow rollout, there was a Zoom the first day he was hired. There was an actual formal introductory news conference, and then this Monday, this week, I got to sit down with him just one-on-one. So it's been finding out more about him, learning more about him. I like what I see. Sean was here and I was here back in 20 or 15 years ago, but I wouldn't say I got a chance to really know him. He was kind of behind the scenes guy. I was a little bit of a behind the scenes guy at the time. So this is really a chance to kind of get to know someone. And, I guess the thing I'd say right now, 2 weeks into his hire, is that I like his energy.
Yeah.
And I like his curiosity. That stood out Monday when I talked to him, is like, he doesn't come in here with all the answers. He wants to find out more. Even as a guy who's been here, he wants to dig in deep and talk to people and kind of understand the landscape before he goes in jumping and making big decisions.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, if my memory serves me right, and he's the first time Wisconsin has had an athletic director that I can remember that wasn't a significant player or coach, right? So Mac was a player, played in the NFL. Barry was, obviously, his track record is there. Prior to that, you had Pat Richter, who was certainly a player. I don't know what Abe Sponberg's background was. Elroy Hirsch prior to that. So, and Sean makes no bones about it. He says, I didn't come from coaching. He goes, and that was how he answered a little bit of the football situation, is that he said he needs to see how Luke and the staff do what they do and what they need from him. So he flipped it, right? I mean, I thought he did a good job of that. He flipped it. He said, I want to see what they need from me before we look at what we need from them. And I thought that was an interesting way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of gets back to what I say about not having all the answers. I mean, he's been around some really good coaches at really all 5 stops. Go back to Whitewater. He took over as a 31-year-old AD and suddenly was his former football coach, Bob Rezowitz's boss, right? Yeah. And that was a pretty powerful set of coaches at Whitewater. So I do think the way he goes about it is he learns from these people and tries to understand coaching, not pretend like he knows it all. I think that's a good process to take. He's going to sit down not with just Luke Fickell, but he's going to sit down with every member of that football staff. He's going to sit down with all 405, I believe, employees at UW just to get to know them. Some of them he's never met, some of them he knows, and B, just to try to understand the situation better and what some of his questions are. What do we do well? What can we get better at? And I think that's a great way. And just to kind of get this into the football talk, what better way to understand a program and where it might be headed or where it might be struggling than to ask, and try to get to the bottom of things. So I do, like I said, curious is one thing that has stood out about him. I think that's a great quality to have. And I think if you're a boss, that's even better quality to have.
When the negativity for those who wanted to view, and there's certainly the percentage of sport population that skews to the negative side first. Nebraska is a curious model there because Bo Pelini was not very popular before that decision was made to let him go. And I don't think it was about the firing of Bo Pelini. It was about the hiring of Mike Riley, who didn't end up working, right? I mean, Mike Riley had some success at Oregon State. Maybe the concept was, here's a really good guy who really knows his football. He's going to be more of a Nebraska guy than Bo was on the back end. And maybe because we have greater resources, this will be a perfect fit for him rather than playing second fiddle in the state of Oregon behind the Ducks. but it didn't work. And that was the criticism of him, and the downside at Nebraska is he hired the wrong football coach. Is that a fair way to look at the negative side of that experience?
Yeah, I think there's more, I would say, but let's start with football. If he gets that hire right, certainly, yes, he's probably got the job for longer than he has it. And you're right about Pelini. Like, he had a small group of, I don't know if it's small, a vocal group of people that were very, very loyal to Bo Pelini. So when that move was made, there was a lot of anger, but there was also a group at Nebraska that wanted him out. They just, not so much for the wins and losses, but how he presented himself. And so I don't think firing Pelini was really the move that got Sean, kind of caused the eyes to be looked at him a little bit more. It was not getting the Mike Riley hire right.
Right.
There was more to his tenure at Nebraska, just from I don't think he was out in public enough, especially with the media. Like, I think he was kind of not as accessible as he would be. And I think that's something he learned. Like, to his credit, I think he learned that lesson and is going to try harder to be more accessible to the media and others. And one thing he did at Nebraska that should be noted is they did like a barnstorming tour of the state just to meet people.
Yeah.
And I think he'll do that eventually here. I don't know if he has to do it as much here because people know him, but it wasn't that he wasn't out. I just don't think he got himself in front of the right people there, and some grudges were held.
Yeah. And here, if I just, and we'll get to it in a moment, but if I take football off the table, everything else here looks to be in pretty good shape, right? I mean, of the sports that we pay some significant attention to, volleyball, both hockeys, basketball, certainly on the men's side in a good spot, and on women's side appears to be trending in the right direction. And even some of the sports we don't pay that much attention to, track and field on the Solinsky hire, softball, Yvette Healy and the success they're having. Certainly volleyball is something we pay a lot of attention to. I mean, bigger picture, Jim, he's in a good spot. Football will be the question.
Yeah, it's a solid foundation. I think those are exact words. Like, this is a solid foundation he's walking into, with the caveat, and it's a rather large caveat, that you've got to get football right? Like, you got to, in the next 2 years, you've got to fix that, or else the bills really start becoming due. And if attendance continues to dip, it becomes a pretty big problem. So he's got to get that right. And I don't think he comes in with any changes he's going to make right off the bat. It's an evaluation period, and this season is huge as far as understanding the trajectory of this program. I mean, it's just, there's no other way to say it than we have to see what happens this fall, because right now, it's, especially from Sean Eichhorst's standpoint, it's just too early for him to make any snap judgments.
Jim, I don't think it's fair to put we put numbers on things all the time, but there are always nuances involved in the numbers. So if I say to you, what is a win-loss number at the end of the season that makes Sean Eichhorst's decision for him? It's easy to say, well, if this team wins 8 games, he's not making a football decision. If they win 6 games, he's probably making a football decision, but there's nuances involved there. What does success look like for football this year, where Sean Eichhorst doesn't have to really dig in and think about making a call on that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I've spent probably too much time thinking about it, because you're right. Yeah. You can point to 7-5. That's kind of where I've landed, right? Like, with this schedule, you have to go 7-5, or else, I don't see how you get around it. And 7-5, even, I don't know that would be that impressive of a season. It certainly would be, the arrow is pointing up after going 4-8, but I think you're only looking at it that way because last season was so bad, right? Like, it's hard not to go up. 7-5, does that include a win over Minnesota to end the season, right? Because if you go 7-5 and lose to Iowa and Minnesota, there's going to be a lot of people that are still unhappy. So it's nuanced. It's, how does this team look in its losses? Like, let's start off with game 1. How does this team look against Notre Dame? Do they look competitive? Yeah. Is there reason for hope after that game? That's a big thing. But I've kind of landed at anything less than 7-5 is just, it's a tough look.
Yeah, let me add to that, because you and I are thinking along the same lines. If you're 7-5 and you lost to Notre Dame in a non-competitive fashion, you lost at Penn State, in a non-competitive fashion. You didn't beat Iowa, you didn't beat Minnesota, and you lost to USC. None of your wins are hang your hat on wins. So I do think 7-5, depending on the nuances, has a chance to be not good enough. I think they're an 8-win team, but I do that without all of us do that without having seen this quarterback play at this level, or so many of their players that are going to be featured playing at this level. That's just the transfer portal era of college football. Is you just haven't seen these guys. But to me, success is probably 8. 7 wins. Some people say, well, yeah, he's not making a change at 7 wins. I mean, that's where the nuance comes in, right?
Well, the tricky part too, Mike, is that 7 wins with a quarterback who has eligibility left, and some of your best young players, Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano, with eligibility left, right? I think you can sell yourself on, okay, 7-5. This season has its it's not great, right? The record improved. It's not a great season, but maybe there's one more season, and you're going to be better in 2027 when the schedule again is favorable. Not, maybe not as favorable as this year, but favorable. So, it's tough. And nuance is a word you keep using, and I think that's such an important word, is that you need to kind of look underneath the hood and see where they're headed. Some pretty significant changes were made in the offseason regarding NIL and stuff, right? Does Luke Fickell need a 2-season runway before you can really truly judge him? I think all of that is great fodder and something for Sean Nyquist to kind of decide over the next 6 months or so. This
is more about the football and the people involved directly in it and how they work and go about their daily business. But for anybody going to ACDC this weekend or going around the stadium, it's a mess. Right now, it's a full construction zone. McLean Center is being bulldozed as we speak. It's going on now. But they're going to have to move, Jim. They're going to be in a temporary locker room the next year, maybe 2. They'll have use of the new facility, but phase 2 is when that completes, and that's a couple of years down the road before we're talking about the completion. But, I mean, they're working out of temporary setups now for the next 2 seasons probably.
Yeah, I was just there Monday, and it was, you're right, a mess. I didn't know where to park. I didn't know how to get from one end of the stadium to Kilner Hall. It's a little bit of a metaphor for the athletic department in general, that it's under construction, right? Like I do think this is an important stretch. This is such an important, I keep using this phrase in stories. It's a critical time for both Wisconsin, but also college athletics in general. And it's crucial. Like we don't know what the rules are going to look like. We don't know what conferences are going to look like. It's a big time for college athletics, and it's a big time for Wisconsin. And that's why I think, it's a hard job Sean Nyquist is walking into. There's a lot of good things about it, and that's why I don't think it's a complete rebuild or I think it was still a pretty attractive job to the right person. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year plus for this institution and for Sean Nyquist and this football program. I know that's where you started the question.
Yeah, and it will be for basketball. I think Greg Gard and his staff have done such a great job, much of it drumming up some of their own dollars to do what they're doing and finding guys that others didn't find or didn't invest in. But they need greater resources at their disposal to keep up and compete with the upper echelon in college basketball. And that's where Sean Nyquist did his work. His first time here was not the funding, but his oversight was over Bo Ryan and men's basketball. And he's close with that staff. He covered those. He was working when those players who are on the staff now were playing. And Gard has been a longtime friend of his. So they also know that that's number 2 on the importance list, and funding needs to be at a higher level there. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, and the tricky part throughout, no matter who the athletic director was, the tricky part to me has always been how many resources do you devote to football, knowing that football has to get right? Like you have to get that right.
Yeah.
But you don't want to take away from men's basketball. You don't want to take away from volleyball and others, men's hockey, right? Like you can't do that. Like last winter, what we saw was women's hockey and men's hockey kind of lifted the spirits of an athletic department that really needed it after that fall, right? So it's I don't know what I would do if I were in Sean Eichhorst's shoes, excuse me.
Yes.
In terms of like how you divvy up that money. But yes, you look at how basketball money especially has exploded. The NIL money has exploded in the offseason.
Yeah.
And it's been tough for Greg Gard and company to keep up as hard as they're working behind the scenes.
Right.
And I don't know how you get that right. I really don't, because Greg Gard has worked really hard behind the scenes and just kind of grassroots fundraising. They need more like if you're talking about an issue right now that Sean Eichhorst has to get to the bottom to, is they need more donors. They have some really good donors and a lot of people have given a lot of money. They need to grow that base. That was going to be the challenge for whoever took over that role. And I think one of the main priorities for Sean Eichhorst is how do we build that donor base so we're not relying on the same people year after year after year.
Yeah. And maybe Culver's changes their color scheme.
Yeah.
Maybe they become, those patches are going to be on the uniforms this year. And I'm in favor of that. I know some traditionalists don't like that. I don't even see it after a while, which is not what the company wants to hear. Right. But I don't notice Northwest Mutual on Brewers uniforms. There comes a time when I don't see it anymore. So not a significant issue. Let me take you up to Lambeau. 2 weeks from today, training camp will get underway, and this is the outrage season because we're in the season of lists, right? Yeah. So your quarterback's not in the top 10. What do you mean he's not in the top 10? Is what we do. We get outraged, and the fans get outraged. But when we cut to the chase, who the Packers are this season will depend a lot on how the offensive line works. And it's Zach Tom's return. What they do at left tackle with Jordan Morgan, can he be that guy? Because if they don't work up front, then the Jordan Love conversation is a moot point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the offensive line has to be better this year. I think the other group that I'm really got my eyes on entering this season is the wide receivers. They've got a young, talented group there with a couple of guys that need to make jumps, like 3 guys probably in my mind that need to make jumps and are certainly capable of it. If those 2 position groups are better than they were last season, I think that makes Jordan Love better. I really do. I think it's one of those cases where the people around Jordan Love need to improve, and I am counting on Jordan Love taking another step too. And if all 3 of those things happen, then I think that offense looks a lot better and certainly a lot more consistent.
I was talking to Aaron Nagler about this the other day. There's you're coaching against history right now with Matt LaFleur. There's only been one NFL head coach in the league's history to coach in and win a Super Bowl after year 7 when he hasn't done it in the first 7. That was John Madden, who did it with the Oakland Raiders. First ring with the Raiders in his 8th season in 1977. So LaFleur's through 7. He hasn't been to a Super Bowl, and there are those who say, well, he's not going to be. What is your view on where he stacks right now? And even with the extension, it would seem to me, I want your opinion, that he's coaching for his job on a yearly basis as we roll forward.
Yeah, I almost think that should be the way it is in the NFL.
Yeah. For
almost everybody. I think it's a big year for him. I wondered after walking out of Soldier Field last year after that playoff loss, I wondered if he'd be back. I kind of doubted he would be back, and I was wrong. So yes, it's a huge year for him. I look around the NFC and I don't know that I would say that they're the favorites. I think they're in the group of teams that are in the running. I don't know that I would say they're in the favorites, but you'd like to see positive steps forward. You'd like to see them be in the running for an NFC championship game. But I don't know. I do think I don't like the idea of coaches getting stale. I don't really buy into that. I think coaches can kind of keep evolving and getting better. But yeah, it's a big year for him. It's a big year for Brian Gutekunst too. I think that's one thing that I've kind of struggled with is, I almost tend to put more heat on Matt LaFleur when this team performs the way it does, like it did last season. And maybe Gutekunst deserves, a greater share of the blame too. So yeah, throw him in that category of it's a big year for him, because some of his young players that I think have a lot of talent need to step up. And I've named, I've named some groups, but there's probably a handful of guys that I think are really talented, and yet we haven't seen their full capability. And I don't know if that's a coaching staff problem or an evaluation problem. So I think it's a big year to kind of the whole group up there to kind of evaluate them.
And Jim, I think when we talk about coaches getting stale, they get stale sometimes to media and sometimes certainly to the fan base. But the roster is there. I mean, there's no, I haven't looked, but I don't think there's a member of the Packers player roster that was on the team in Matt LaFleur's first 2 seasons, maybe not even his first 3 that's there now. I could be wrong on somebody there, but if there is that guy, there's not many of them. Sometimes it's a kicker or a punter, and I don't think that's the case. So the message gets old with the fan base. We don't want to see coaches react the same way after a loss. And after you've seen it a few years, well, he said the same thing 6 years ago and 4 years ago. And I think it's the same thing as scars over teams that blow late leads. This team didn't blow a late lead in 2014 in Seattle, right? I mean, but for a fan base, those always stay with you. And I think the Packers fans are kind of starved right now for January success, right?
That's the word I was going to use. Is it's a starving fan base, because it's been so long, and I think you do tend to, every year that it doesn't happen after that, it just, this feeling inside of you tends to grow and grow and grow. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And again, it comes down to this: whether you're Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst or Jordan Love, you got to go out there and do it, right? Yeah. Until you do it, the questions hover over you. It's just, whether that's fair or not, it's part of the job, and that's kind of where this franchise and some of its key members find themselves right now.
Yeah, and the importance of 3 significant members returning from injury, and people don't think of that with Zach Tom, but Zach Tom is coming back from an injury. He might be their most important offensive lineman, along with Jordan Morgan playing left tackle. So is Tom healthy? And then Micah Parsons, you got to think that's a late season injury. I mean, I don't know if I would look at him in the month of October. If it is, it's late October. And then Tucker Kraft, to be the guy that he was before the injury last year, he would be back sooner, I would think. But those 3, I mean, the critical nature of their return, I don't think it can be underestimated.
No, I think what you're hoping for, if you're a Packers fan, is to kind of get through the first half of the season with a decent enough record where you can get those guys, some of your dudes, I always call them, back and healthy. And then certainly you want them healthy on January 8th or 9th or whatever the playoffs begin. Because I think if you can get this roster is talented enough. I think if you can get this roster healthy enough, by that time of the season, then it's, the playoffs, anything can happen, right? You just want to get there and be in good enough position where, you certainly don't want to go in having to win 3 road games in January to get there. But that, I do think the early part of the season is important, just for kind of treading water, such a bad way to put it. But, win enough games that you're in the hunt. And then if you can get those 3 guys back healthy, and if you can keep them healthy, which is just as important, I think you've got a chance, because, they didn't have some of their bell cows late last season. That's not an excuse, but it's factual. Yeah. And that wasn't the roster they wanted to take into the postseason.
Let me slide down the road and take you to Milwaukee for the Brewers. Lance McCullers, it appears, is going to be acquired today. It's a bit of a flyer. He's pitched this year for Houston, but not in a few weeks. He's on the IL right now. I think that really smart people in the Brewers front office see something in him that maybe Chris Hook and Jim Henderson can pull out. They're also very short of arms right now. Here at the All-Star break, most wins in franchise history at the break at 59. Recent memory has people worried because of the last, 28 hours in Pittsburgh didn't go very well with 3 losses. But they're overall in a really good spot. It creates the question that we're going to be asking and trying to answer for the next 2+ weeks. is, do they do something of significance before or at the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think they have to. The question becomes how significant, right? Like I think, like I do think they need arms. I went over there a couple weeks ago for the Chicago series, and I walked away thinking, certainly need bullpen arms and really could use a bat, a power bat that you could rely on come October. And now just seeing how Mizorowski and Harrison are, in need of a little bit of a break. I think you could use a starting arm too, and that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that any of those guys are going to be huge names, because you're going to have to give up some pretty big names in your farm system to get those guys. But I do think they have to make some moves. It's just a matter of how big those moves are. And I think the one thing is they're in a position of strength in that their farm system is really good and really deep right now. Yeah. I think you can acquire some key pieces without giving up some of your key pieces in the farm system. So I think that's probably the position that Matt Arnold is operating from right now, is that, you can make some moves without depleting your farm system and keeping yourself competitive for years to come.
I talked about this yesterday a little bit, but I would prepare the fan base for feeling underwhelmed on what the Brewers do, especially compared to what I think they will do in Chicago, because I do think a guy like Tarek Skubal could be a Cub before the trade deadline comes and goes, or Ryan up in Minnesota. I think the Cubs are going to make a bigger news splash on the trade front than the Brewers. It's been part of the MO for both, I think. And they're closing in the rear view just a little bit, and the fans are going to get really nervous and not happy about that one, if indeed it happens.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, I think there's a portion of the fan base that wants the Brewers just to go all in and do it. And I get that feeling. I from my perspective, I'm not even sure going all in is enough, because I think the Dodgers are, even though the record doesn't indicate it, they're still the Dodgers, and I think that team is better and significantly better right now. So that's what you don't want to happen, is going all in, depleting, getting rid of some of your best minor leaguers and having nothing to show for it. And that's right. If you're Matt Arnold, it's kind of the tough situation you find yourself in.
And to me, there's also one more layer on this, and that's the critical nature of winning your division and being one of the top two teams, which a year ago obviously got them to the divisional round in a showdown with the Cubs without having to play. And I think that's almost, to me, it's as important as being the one seed in the NFL that you get a bye. If you're one of the top two seeds in Major League Baseball in your league, you don't have to play that opener. And I think for the Brewers, that means a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Winning series is, as the Brewers have shown by having great regular seasons for a long time and not even to show for it in the playoffs. Winning series is difficult because there's not a lot of difference between these teams, the best teams in each league. And then baseball is such a funny sport that, anything can happen in October. Yeah. So, I agree with you. Having to win one less series or one fewer series is huge. So if you can hold on and win the division and be playing your best baseball come October, I think that's huge. You mentioned the Pittsburgh series before. I'm not all that concerned. I think this team hit a wall after a long stretch, and they are, their arms, the pitching staff is depleted right now. I'm not overall too concerned about how that series played out. If you win that first game of the doubleheader last Saturday, I think things look a lot different. But let's see how they come out of it after a really, really long stretch. And it was an absolute grind the last 3 weeks of the pre-All-Star stretch.
I have one Bucks question. Do you? So Tyler Hero, and again, in Madison, he's not making friends for the comment that he talked about the decommit from Wisconsin. He wouldn't be with the Bucks or in the NBA now, which is silly. For him, maybe it's funny, but where do they sit now, 3 weeks removed from the trade? There's not much news in the summer other than Summer League, but do you think they will pull in some sense of excitement about, being a team that is going to build? Or that's obviously the goal, can it be attained in the near term?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lengthy rebuild. I don't know what number I would put on it. I think some of their most loyal fans are going to like this stretch. They're going to like watching young players grow, and as they should. Like there's some young, intriguing pieces on the roster now, and even though it might result in more losses, it's going to be interesting, intriguing to watch them grow. Right? I get that. Yeah. I think the casual fan might tune out. I worry about that a little bit because no one wants to see the losses pile up. There's no guy like Giannis to go watch, and he was such a fun player to watch that I think the casual fan might kind of tune out for the time being. But it's just kind of how you want to look at this situation. Sure. It was time for a reset, right? Like I don't know how you make the argument that it wasn't. This team was not close to winning a championship, and if that's the point, then you got to kind of find a way to move on and reset the roster, and they've done that with what I think are some young, intriguing guys. And that's, from my perspective, I don't want to say I'm more interested in this team than I was pre-trade, but I'm just as interested because I think there's some young guys who could kind of grow. And if you can watch a player grow over years and years, it's fun when it ends up blossoming, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you're much of a soccer fan, but are you a bigger soccer fan today than you were 6 weeks ago?
No, I'm a pretty big soccer fan. Okay. I wasn't growing up, really didn't start being a soccer fan until my kids started playing. But I'm a pretty big fan. And I don't say I'm any bigger. I've spent a fair amount of time watching the World Cup, and it's a great event. And it's been kind of interesting for me to kind of watch the American fans who maybe aren't as big of fans kind of grow into this. And then there's a lot of people around the world who know the game better and appreciate the game more. And there's been a lot of bickering between the two bases. That's been fun for me as kind of someone kind of in the middle. But yeah, it's a great event. The thing I'm bummed the most about is I didn't get to any games. There weren't really any close options. Kansas City was the closest, but yeah, it's been a great event, and I'm interested to see how it finishes up.
Hey, Jim, I always appreciate you spending time. I know it's a longer window than when we do this, so I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to the next time we get a chance.
My pleasure, Mike. I'll see you around.
From Brewers TV analyst, Vinny, how are you, sir? Hey, have you joined? You had a little break here because you didn't work that last trip, and then the All-Star break.
I had a nice break. Yeah, it was nice to be with the family. It was nice to just kind of do everything with my girls, and we went to the pool a lot. I actually did a bunch of showcases as well for Prep Baseball Wisconsin. I worked for them as well. So, no, it was good. It was a nice little break, and ready to get back to it tomorrow against the Marlins. Brewers, Marlins, I'll be in the booth for that.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions going into the All-Star break. I think people get skewed negatively on what happened over about 26 hours in Pittsburgh, Saturday afternoon to Sunday, in losing 3 games in a short period of time. First time they've lost 3 in a row since April. But in the big picture, you look at a team that's won 59 times, lost 34. So you're 25 games over 500, 5-game lead in the division. Vinny, what went right in the first half? And maybe where are some of the question marks? We'll get to the question marks. Let's start with what went right in the first half.
Look, Mike, I think when you look at this Milwaukee Brewers team and what Pat Murphy has been able to build here in Milwaukee, the culture that he's been able to build, I mean, we could talk all day, and we likely will. We will continue to do so about the offense and how good that the offense has been, how good the starting pitching has been, including Jacob Mizorowski, who's emerged as the best pitcher on the planet at this point. We can talk about the defense, the base running, all the physical things that the Brewers do so well, very consistently. There's really no holes on this roster and on this team. But what they do and what went so right in the first half is they did not have to play their best baseball to still stack a bunch of wins on top of each other. That's what's so impressive about this group is that they win these one-run games. These last 3 games against the Pittsburgh Pirates notwithstanding. You're going to lose some of those one-run games, of course. But they won so many of those close games They did so on the backs of just playing this relentless style of baseball that puts pressure on opposing teams to make mistakes, and they do, and they they capitalize on these mistakes that other teams make, and they come out on top all the time. And again, it is about the way that they hit, pitch, field, and run. It is all about that for sure. But again, it is more so about that this team has such a will to win, and they almost got to 60 wins before the All-Star break, would have been one of 21 teams of all time to do so. Unfortunately, they couldn't get to that mark, but they have bigger things to accomplish this year than just to get to the 60 win mark before the All-Star break. So they have a bright season ahead of them. And it's all going to come down to their starting pitchers. I really do believe that, because the way that this group has played up and down the lineup offensively, the position player group, they're just so consistent. They have other guys that step up any given night that another guy is cold. They just got so many weapons that I do think it's going to come down to their starting pitching and how it can sustain itself in order to answer the question whether or not this team can win a World Series.
We'll get to pitching and a trade that they made yesterday. We'll get there in a moment. But let me talk about the left side of the infield, because for a while it was the biggest concern. Maybe it still is for the position players in this lineup on a daily basis. When you had Joey Ortiz and David Hamilton and others playing at third base, that didn't work. So they adjusted and they made the move to go to Cooper Pratt. He's your everyday shortstop, and Joey Ortiz and Hamilton, when healthy, are likely going to share that third base duty unless they make a deal. Is it good enough, Vinny, that left side of the infield that people were worried about so much for the first 2 months?
I'm going to say yes. And people are going to say, well, wait a minute, how is that possible? It's possible because you're not accounting for the fact, and I'm more so looking at Joey Ortiz as the everyday third baseman, not because of the bat, but because of the glove.
Yeah.
And you'll take what you can get on offense with Joey Ortiz. Okay, so like let's say it's still really poor offensively for Joey Ortiz. How is that enough? And my answer to that is the fact that you have Garrett Mitchell playing the way that he's playing. You have Jake Bauers playing the way that he's playing. You have all these other complementary pieces. What other team has a catcher that's going to produce like an all-star behind home plate? So you have all these other guys around the roster and around the field that are producing offensively that can kind of cover the hole that you have with Joey Ortiz at third and Cooper Pratt at short. And so it's the defense that's going to prevent runs that's going to allow you to win games and have those guys be enough. So that's my answer to that. I love Joey Ortiz over there at third, and we'll see what happens. But I actually think that's going to be enough.
So one of the questions before I get to the pitching side, you have to get offensive production from the DH. I mean, by definition, that's the designated hitter. Christian Yelich has not delivered at that level, not for lack of effort or work or want to, but he's one of the big question marks for me is if he can, and he works his tail off to find it, if he can find it to the level to produce the way a DH ought to, because so far through 90, almost 100 games, that there hadn't been enough offense out of the DH.
I agree. And that is the other conversation. So there is kind of a hole at your DH spot with Christian Yelich. So what do? This is a very tough one. It's a very delicate situation. Can you bench Christian Yelich? And I know that, and I read Twitter, and I see the comments out there, everyone, you got to bench Christian Yelich. If you lose Christian Yelich in terms of what he can bring attitude-wise, what he can bring on the winning side, the culture side of things, that's going to be detrimental to the team also. So there's a delicate balance there. He's capable of finding it. We've seen him find it. He's a tinkerer. He's a thinker up at the plate. But when he finds it, he is one of the best hitters in all of baseball. We've seen him find it at stretches this season, but not consistently. So he needs to get consistent. How do you do it? Maybe you move him down in the lineup a little bit. I don't know. There's ways for Pat Murphy to kind of deal with this situation, but you definitely need him to produce. Hopefully he finds it sooner than later. Because, I think if he's hot in September and October, then we can have that real and we're having a real conversation about the Brewers winning the World Series right now. But if he's hot in October, you can't really stop the team, considering the other guys that are swinging the bat and should be consistent throughout the rest of the season. He's facing the age curve, Mike. He's 34 years old. That's what's happening here with Christian Yelich, I think. But the bat speed's still there. Some of the metrics are still there. I think he's just kind of going through one of those down periods that we've seen him go through these last few seasons.
And the internet debate on it would be, well, why isn't Andrew Vaughn in your lineup on an every day? And either he or Bowers, one of them can DH the day the other one isn't. And that's the Christian Yelich deal. And I was talking about this yesterday, Vinny. You certainly can attest to this. I think that Sal Frelick is kind of the model of what this team is built on. That guy's going to run through. He's a hockey player. There's a little hockey player mentality in this group. But I think your leader, who they look to, is Christian Yelich. Not vocally, although when he speaks, I'm sure everybody stops and pays attention. But he is your leader. So they're going to give him every opportunity to find it, because when he finds it, he can carry you for 2 weeks. And if that 2 weeks is in October, hello. Exactly.
And so Christian, what people need to realize is that this game is different from back in the day, from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, where if you were in those clubhouses, and I know that you were, Mike, those were clubhouses where guys just, they policed itself. The young guys, they were kind of shunned in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
The old veteran group would kind of, everyone would be, it was all about winning. And this was up and down the big leagues. This is the kind of feel that the Brewers have in this clubhouse. And it's not like this everywhere. I'm telling you, it's not. There's so much money at stake for these guys that a lot of players, a lot of them, don't really care about winning. They just want their numbers so that they can sign that big lucrative contract. Okay, that's the reality of it. In this Brewers clubhouse, I'm telling you, it is different. And Christian Yelich is a huge reason for that. Why? Because he was brought up in the minor league system of a very good minor league system at the time. I played in that system. It was the Miami Marlins at the time. And he was taught that old school mentality, that old school way to win. And he's bringing that to the Brewers. Now, a bunch of these guys also have that mentality, right? Yeah. And that's Pat Murphy, bringing in and making sure Matt Arnold brings in the right kind of people. But it is Christian Yelich that is leading that group. It 100% is. So you have to make sure, not that you have to make him happy. That's not a thing. Yeah. It's just you have to keep him engaged and keep him in this lineup, keeping him contributing to winning baseball, and he'll get there. I think that he thinks that he'll get there. I think that Murph thinks he'll get there. It'll be a little bit of a process. Maybe you have to live through some adjustment period right now, but Christian Yelich will get there. And when he does, like you said, it's going to be, hard to stop. It's going to be a train rolling on the tracks with this team, clicking on all cylinders up and down the lineup. That's when you want to get hot in October. The Brewers were hot last year, but they ran into that buzzsaw, the Dodgers, and they kind of got cold in that one series. Yeah. So you need a Yelich to kind of carry you through a series like that. Hopefully he'll get there. I do believe that he will.
Vinny, I have 3 levels of concern about pitching. Brandon Woodruff is my most significant. I don't know if he'll throw again this year for this team, or if they can manage to put him out there in pick your times, get him healthy and have him do what he did for that, 2 or 3 starts when he came back. I don't know, but he's the biggest concern. Kyle Harrison is in the in-between. Like I'm a little worried about him. And then with Mizorowski, I said, this is interesting when they scratched him from that start. And it's something to keep an eye on, but I don't know that I'm worried about it. He's at 111 innings. He threw 129 across minor league and major league baseball a year ago. So his inning total is going to be up. But would you agree on those fronts? What's your level of concern where those 3 starting pitchers are in the conversation?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you just have to count out Brandon Woodruff. I just think so. Okay, so operate with the understanding that you're not going to have him. Jacob Mizorowski. I think that they planned on having him, quote unquote, start that last game before the All-Star break, knowing that they were going to scratch him from that start so that he didn't have to pitch in the All-Star game. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
That was the calculus there. That
like
I think. Okay, so now what that does is it provides you an opportunity to give Jacob Mizorowski a long stretch off of just rest. So now all of a sudden you have him skipping that start that I'm sure that they were planning all season long. So you skip that start. And so you give him a long rest. Now you can go ahead and have him make every single start from here on out. And it's going to be another, I don't even know. I got to do the math on that. But he's going to get way over his innings mark from last year. Now remember, he pitched in the playoffs last year, so that 129 is really 145 and a third, I think. Okay, if you include the playoffs. Okay, and so it's a little less than that. I might have that wrong, but he's going to get way over this.
Yeah, he's going to be above 200 innings by the time we're all said and done.
Right. So I think just based on how he's performing, I think that's really going to be the thing to monitor. Is his arm slot dropping? These are the things they look at in start. Is his arm slot dropping a little bit? Is his carry on his fastball a little bit off? Is he pulling off, trying to create more with his body rather than stay in his delivery? Those are the things that Chris Hook and company are going to be looking at to make sure that he is really performing optimally, just the very under the hood kind of metrics that they're going to look at. And if he's right, they're going to ride him out. The other thing is they're going to make sure that every single one of these starters, Mike, has a full 5 days rest. Yeah. They have a stretch in August where they play 17 games in a row without a day off. So they're going to have to make sure that they get a guy like Colton Gordon that they just acquired in this deal yesterday for Lance McCullers. I know we're probably going to get into that. But they're going to have a guy like that or other guys in AAA come up, make some spot starts to make sure that you almost have a 6-man rotation, but just optioning guys up and down from AAA in order to give each one of these starters, including most importantly Miz, a full 5 days off in between each start. And so I think if you do that, he'll be fine. He looks like he's going to be fine. The one that's concerning to me, Mike, that you mentioned is Kyle Harrison. Yeah. Kyle Harrison's injury or lack thereof. I don't think they're qualifying it as an injury, but he's on the injured list. The sore elbow is a little bit of a concern. They do like to downplay injuries. Remember Quinn Priester last year, this thoracic outlet thing with his nerve issue coming down from that collarbone area all the way down to his wrist was happening last year, at the end. And that's why I think he really struggled with his command and his velocity in the playoffs. So I think, even going into this year, they downplayed it. He just has a little wrist issue.
Sure.
Well, he required surgery. So I'm not saying that that's the case here for Kyle Harrison. They do like to downplay injury stuff. That's the one that's concerning to me. He is so important to this World Series run that we're talking about. Yeah. Because you got to have two. You got to have at least two. If they don't acquire anybody, it's going to be Miz and Harrison, and they're going to ride those guys hard all the way through, all the way to the end. So he's got to be healthy. I think really take care of his health and treat him with kid gloves in the utmost way in order to make sure that he is healthy in September and October. Now, let me say this last thing. They have to get that first round bye. If they have to. Yeah, they have to get that first round bye. So you don't necessarily have to chase down the Dodgers for the number 1 seed, but I think that number 2 seed is an absolute goal for this team. In order to set up your pitching in the playoffs, in order to set it up to have Miz go game 1 in the DS and the NLDS. So that's going to be something. So do you really hold back Harrison because you have to get a certain record in order to get that first round bye and that number 2 seed at least? That's going to be a conversation here going forward. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. But Harrison, definitely his health is of utmost importance to this team.
Yeah. Their lead in the race for the number 2 bye is 3.5 games over the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are next in that chase. By the way, I would add the Brewers lead the division by 5. I think you all know that, over the Cubs. The Cubs are closer to losing out on the last wild card. They've got I think a 3.5 game lead over the last wild card than they are to winning the division. So, just to put it in some perspective, 5 games is a lead that can go away in a hurry, but they lead the last wild card, I think, by 3.5. So it's not as though they have a big cushion on that front. It can go the other way for them, too. Lots of moving parts. Let me ask you about Lance McCullers Jr., one of the acquisition pieces yesterday in the first of what we believe will be a league-wide bevy of trades leading up to the August 3rd trade deadline. The storyline there is he's a depth piece, but I always wonder with Chris Hook and Jim Henderson, he's on the IL now. But if he comes back and he's healthy, that if, before they make a deal like this, I'm sure talk to Hookie and Henderson. What do you see? Is there an upside yet with him that you guys might be able to tap into? And I would think that they said, yes.
Yeah. And whenever I reach out to Chris, whenever I reach out to Hookie about something like this, he always says, well, let me just get around him first.
Sure,
let me actually have a conversation with him first before you think I'm going to perform miracles. But look, this is not that he would have to perform a miracle here, but this is what we expect from Chris Hook. This is what I fully expect him to kind of tweak something here with Lance McCullers Jr. and be able to tap into something. Now, health obviously is the conversation here with this guy. I mean, he has been hurt. There is a laundry list of injuries. I mean, he signed this deal, an $85 million deal with the Houston Astros in 2021. Since 2022, I think he's thrown 94 innings or something. Very small amount.
Like 800 days in between starts with Tommy John and shoulder stuff. So, he's not been a very healthy pitcher of late, but he has a rehab start, I think, tomorrow night. Scheduled was the final rehab start. It'll change because he's not in their organization anymore. So, I'll let you keep going on this. He's been hurt even right now. Yeah. So it's like a shoulder issue now. And I think this was a salary dump a little bit by the Houston Astros. Yeah. So they can get under the luxury tax. So they have flexibility as to what they're going to do at the trade deadline. That's kind of the storyline here for them. Now the Brewers will take it, and especially with some risk. And if they can tap into something, these are the kinds of risks that the Brewers do take because you have a guy named Chris Hook on your payroll. And so now all of a sudden, if he can stay healthy, I think that they do just a phenomenal job. Chris Hook does a phenomenal job of kind of talking to these pitchers about how to really execute and be able to get behind a cutter. Now this is something that we saw from Quinn Priester. This is something that we've seen from Chad Patrick, that he's kind of, it's a slightly different version of the cutter that they think they're throwing. Now Lance McCullers Jr., this is his first year of throwing that pitch. And so now if you can get him to get a little bit more lift on it, and that's kind of Chris Hook's specialty, lift meaning, not just a mini slider. That's what most guys think of as a cutter. That's but now Chris Hook has these guys throwing like a cutter that looks like it's rising to the hitter. And now let's see if he can tap into that. He's got a great curveball, always has. He's only throwing 91, 93 miles per hour right now. But you never know. Like, again, Chris Hook has a way of getting guys to convince guys to believe in their stuff, believe in themselves on the mound, and maybe we'll see that from a guy that at one point was one of the most electrifying arms on the mound. I mean, he really was. It was nasty stuff. We'll see, but I'm looking forward to seeing him. It sounds like he might even make his next start at the big league level. Okay.
It's kind of what they're speculating. Now that's not for sure, but we'll see. It's a guy that's got so many playoff innings. So again, if you get this guy in a playoff rotation,
been there.
Been there, done that type of thing.
Last 3 innings, I think it's Game 7 against the Dodgers. He threw 24 consecutive curveballs at one point. You want to talk about having a pitch that I get it with 24 consecutive fastballs because we see that from Miz.
Right. But
24 consecutive breaking balls and not to have him get hit. I think he only gave up 1 hit in that run of innings. Anyway, all right. So Tyson Harden is another name that is within the Brewers organization that may walk his way into some innings at the big league level as a pitcher, because we're going to talk about Logan Henderson and Robert Gasser and Sproat and Drone, because those 4 guys, they're going to be part of what you do. 1 or 2 of them might go to middle relief, but Harden is a guy, I think you brought him up before. He's at AAA Nashville. We talk about position players there. We haven't talked much about pitching, but he's one of those arms that might play into what the Brewers do in the second half.
I would imagine, yeah. It's anybody that's big league ready that's going to be able to. It's going to be able to give you innings that's not going to be a deer in headlights type of a thing, right? And so, this guy, we've been talking about him here for the last calendar year. I mean, he's been one of these guys that looks like he's going to be able to make an impact. Another depth piece. He's got 52 innings right now at the Nashville level, only giving up 43 hits. So, I mean, he's striking out about a guy per inning, not walking anybody. These are attributes for pitchers that the Brewers, like to bring up. I mean, you've seen that from Coleman Crow, who's, hasn't, last start in the big leagues wasn't great. But so, yeah, there's different options. And I think, again, you bring up a guy, give him an opportunity, see, especially that teams really don't know. Yeah. That's the other part about this. They've got so many different options that are depth options that all of a sudden you bring them up against a big league lineup that doesn't really know what to expect from a guy. And you never know what can happen in those starts. You can start mowing down some really good lineups. So we've seen that in the past. He's going to be an option for sure. I remember him as an option, a pretty good option in spring training. He showed out well whenever he made an appearance. So he's a definite depth guy that the Brewers are really going to look seriously into.
Vinny, in 18 days to the trade deadline, how much of what happens on the field impacts the decision made whether to go get somebody? So what is the win-loss impact on the next 17 days as it relates to the trade deadline?
So you're saying if they start to go the opposite direction a little bit, or
let's say the lead goes up to 8 games, or it goes down to 2, does that impact what you do? And I know there's a lot of nuance in there, because when we're talking about a trade, we're likely talking about an arm. How desperately do you need? Does the front office believe that in other ways this team is ready to play into the end of October? I mean, there's a lot of nuance, right, that we don't see in the dugout. It's being talked about by Matt Arnold to Mark Attanasio in making these decisions. Hey, this is what we'd like to do because we believe, or I'm not sure what we should do because we're a year. You know where I'm going with this? How do all those conversations play?
Yeah, I think I was in the front office, or I was in a scouting role, professional scouting role, pro scouting. I wasn't an amateur scout with the Texas Rangers, so I wasn't covering the draft. I wasn't covering high school and college players. I was covering players. This was my time that I was never home. I was on the road flying from San Francisco to Miami in one night. Right, that's the kind of thing that we were doing at this time of year, because you had target guys on your list that you're looking at, and so understanding kind of how a GM works, and the GM at the time was John Daniels. It was, and every guy's different. It was, I'll just say this. I think Matt Arnold operates in a way that's probably in line with just the idea is how expensive or what kind of value can we get for this particular player? This is what we need. We need a pitcher that can cover innings that's going to be reliable. Okay. I think that's the conversation, period. Yeah. I don't think they're going to mess with the position player group. I just don't.
Yeah. Right.
What starting pitcher can we get that's reliable, that's going to be able to help us and help this really inexperienced major league starting pitching staff that we have right now in order to be that guy, like a veteran type.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're kind of looking for. That's going to be able to be that guy. I think that's what he's looking for, and how much value and how expensive it'll be, right, from a prospect standpoint. I just think that's how he operates.
All right, so let me go fan for a moment, because the fan is looking at this and say, no, I want to give the ball to the guy that we don't have yet in game 2 of the National League Championship Series and in game 2 and 6 of the World Series. I want to give the ball to this guy who we have to go trade for, whether that's Ryan up in Minnesota or Skubal in Detroit or Michael Wacha, whoever that might be. That's what the fan's looking at. You think that obviously a GM is going to operate independent from the fan base, but also maybe not necessarily going to get your number 2.
I think Matt Arnold's going to have a conversation. Let's say Tarek Skubal's available, which I hope he is, just because it's going to be it's good for the game to see that guy go to a contender and pitch in the World Series potentially. And hopefully that's on. I'll say that I hope they go get him.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking that as a fan either. I'm speaking that as a guy that there's one name out there that if available, I would try and go get him because he's the right kind of guy. I remember watching him pitch a couple of years ago in Milwaukee. It was last year. Was it again? It was Alexander. Was it Tyler Alexander? The guy that the Brewers had from anyway, the little lefty, and he was the bald guy with the mustache, and he was making jokes about 2 power lefties going up against each other. I forget his name, Alexander.
Yeah.
And I watched Skubal pitch and totally dominate that game. Now I said that is impressive. That's one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen. And he is just a dominant presence out there that you can tell that he wants to win super bad. So if you add a guy like that, he would fit in perfectly with this culture in Milwaukee. I would go get him. I would pay not the ultimate price, which is giving up the number 1 prospect in all of baseball and Jesus Madej. I wouldn't. I kind of wouldn't do that for a rental just because now what if Madej turns into a Jackson Churio? Yep. I guess that's kind of the idea, or a Jacob Mizorowski. I mean, it's a number 1 prospect in baseball. The track record for those guys being stars is pretty high. Okay. Yeah. So that's the only. So I wouldn't give up him, but I would potentially give up a Luis Pena and a Jet Williams. I don't know what the names would have to be in order to get that deal done, but you would try and get that deal done because, again, he gives you the best opportunity to win a World Series. With that said, everybody else, Mike, I would make sure that you're smart about the future. Yeah. Everybody else. But Skubal, to answer your question very directly, I would try and go get him, and I would, not empty the holster completely, obviously, but there's a lot of really good prospects in the minor leagues. They have like 50 guys that other teams probably want, so take a few and go get Skubal. That's my opinion.
How are we going to feel if that doesn't happen and he ends up on the north side of Chicago?
Oh, the north side of Chicago would not be good. I think he's going to end up in L.A., unfortunately, or if the Brewers don't get him, in L.A. or in Philadelphia. Now, let's root against the Detroit Tigers to lose a bunch of games in a row here until August 3rd, because right now they're only 4 out. Yeah, they're only 4 out. So the American League is awful. I mean, just completely mid, as the kids say.
Well, I mean, the White Sox would be they'd have a bye.
Yeah, exactly.
The White Sox at 5 games over 500 right now, tied with the Guardians, they would win the division right now, season ended, and they'd be the second bye.
Yeah. And the Brewers,
that's the difference.
Yeah, the Brewers swept them easily in the first 3 games of the season. Now, different team. They played the Brewers actually played them at the right time.
Right.
But, good scrappy team in a terrible league, in a terrible division right now. And so, you were rooting for the Tigers to lose because, again, I hope that Skubal's on the move. I don't think he ends up in the north side of Chicago. I actually don't think the Cubs have enough prospect capital in order to acquire him. Yeah. And I don't think Jed Hoyer is aggressive enough to make that move. I think he's going to end up, dare I say, with Freddie Peralta, which I'm going to hate to see if that happens. So
I was just going to bring up if there are any legs to Freddie coming back to Milwaukee.
I actually have suggested that to a number of front office people that I have conversations with, and they all say, which I agree, like, how would that look on David Stern's resume if all of a sudden, they trade him back to the Brewers after giving up a couple of prospects? Yeah. That's the only reason. GMs definitely operate that way, Mike. Yeah. They operate in a way that they don't want to look like they have egg on their face, and that would make David Stearns look really bad and potentially cause him to lose his job. It really would, especially if Freddie comes over to Milwaukee and all of a sudden perform. I would love for Chris Hook to get around Freddie Peralta again. I think he's not had a good year, especially his last 3-4 starts have been terrible for him. But he would be good back here again. You would find him in a he's a winner. He's a competitor. He's a winner, and you get him back here in Milwaukee where he loved and pitch competitively again in a playoff team. One of the best teams in baseball. He would thrive. He absolutely would, especially with a bunch of winners around him with a great defense behind him. He would thrive. I would love for that to happen. I don't think David Stearns does it.
Let me hit on a couple of players. Let's go back to the position player group. A couple of players in the system that I think, from a fan perspective, that they're kind of pounding on the door and saying, "Hey, what about?" But maybe they're not in play for this year. And I'm talking about Andrew Fisher and Jesus Madej. Neither one is on the 40-man. They're both at the AA level. Can we take them not 100% off the board, but 98% off the board for this year?
Off the board for playing on the big league
level.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibilities for Fisher if he continues to go on this home run binge that he is on. I wouldn't put it out completely out of the realm of possibilities. I could see him, but I would lean towards no, and I could actually see him, winning the job to play first base next year. Come out to spring training, win the job, and he'll be the everyday first baseman next year. I could see something like that happening. Madej, I would say no. He's only 18. Yeah. I would say no. I would say next year is the time that you're going to see that kid up here. Both probably need some at bats at the AAA level.
Sure.
It just the minor leagues is different from back in the day. There's not a whole lot of journeyman big leaguers in AAA anymore. It's just a different league now. It's more, I've heard, like AA from the time that I was in AAA. So the minor leagues is watered down a little bit. They're both going to need some at bats at AAA before they come up. I think both are probably not going to come up this year. I would lean more towards Fisher, and Madej needs to kind of clean some things up defensively as well. So, but Fisher's probably big league ready with the bat. But I would lean towards no on him, just because where would he? He creates another logjam now. With guys that are already playing, and where does Andrew Vaughn then? Would never get at bats, right?
Yeah,
he certainly needs to play.
And then let me finish on this, talking about Luis Lara and how Cooper Pratt and Lara figure in to the final 65 game plan of what they're going to do.
Yep, Lara. I think it's his job to kind of lose, meaning I think he's going to play. He's going to play most every day. And so what does that do to Sal Frelick? He's the odd man out in that situation. I think Pat Murphy is going to try and get Frelick in there as much as he can, get some at-bats. But if Lara starts struggling, you're going to have the hot hand playing, right? So especially, again, trying to chase down that number 2 or maintain that number 2 at least slot in this playoff picture. Pratt, I think, same thing. If all of a sudden Joey Ortiz is swinging the bat and playing the defense that he normally plays, I think you're going to find Joey Ortiz playing some shortstop more often than not, and maybe kind of piece things together at third base. But I think kind of what we've seen is what we're going to get there in terms of those two guys, in terms of playing time. I think both of those guys are capable of really contributing offensively. And so hopefully that happens, because they're going to need it. Especially you get into an October situation in the playoffs.
And there are two things that, before I let you go, just get you to comment off of what I think. I think Cooper Pratt is going to find a little bit more offense. I think that was you're drinking out of a fire hose. I think he'll relax. I think there'll be a little bit more there. I also believe if the Brewers are going to go make one of those bigger deals, I think Sal Frelick stays, and Garrett Mitchell might be one of those pieces. Like, I mean, that would be a significant, that would be a Richter scale move. But if they believe in Luis Lara, and I think they do, that's his position. And Garrett Mitchell, if you're a gambling man, this is the high water to sell at. Now, he could stay healthy for the next 5 years and be an all-star. Or you can say there's been a long history and we got our guy. And you think that's in play?
Ooh, that's an interesting take, Mike. Matt Arnold, everything's in play.
Sure.
If it makes sense, for him.
Yeah.
But then also it's got to get kind of signed off on by Murph. It feels like,
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting take. If the price is right, if the value coming back is correct, I think that you could find that, Garrett Mitchell could be on the move. Yeah, there's risk in the profile.
Sure.
Now, if the Brewers know that there's risk because of all the injuries, then obviously the acquiring teams know that there is risk. So there's nothing really that anymore. I would say I feel like back in the day, you could kind of pull the wool over some teams' eyes.
Yeah. Maybe.
The White Sox felt like a team. You could always do that too. But nowadays, I'm not so sure. But he's performing like an all-star, right?
No
and
kidding.
I kind of think when healthy, this is what you're going to get from Garrett Mitchell. So maybe a team is willing to take that risk, and if so, I personally would make that move. I love Garrett Mitchell, great guy to have in the clubhouse, great performer.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the health stuff. You might want to sell high, taking nothing away from the player or the person.
You would only do that if you're talking about Skubal or Ryan on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just Skubal. I don't know. Well,
I think just Skubal. I think that's the name. I think, guys, that's the name, and I hope they do it. That would be super exciting. It would be a CC Sabathia type of a move, and then all of a sudden the Brewers become the favorite to win the World Series.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Vinny, I can't wait to be back at the ballpark. Look forward to having you in the booth on this weekend series. I'll see you over there next week. I always appreciate you doing this. It's one of my favorite days of the week. Well, it's my favorite day of the week because this is my favorite topic. Appreciate you doing it, and we'll see you at the ballpark this weekend.
Awesome, Mike. We'll see you there.
You did this. You're one of my inspirations to have entered into the podcast world. I think everybody that has listened to this podcast since March or listened to me on the radio when it all went away last September, you have to reinvent. Well, I didn't have to reinvent my opinions, my thoughts, my content on sports, but I had to reinvent the vehicle with which I was going to put it out there. And Trevor was a big help because it's what you've been doing for a while in a different format, but now you've entered into the radio format. Look at you go.
Yeah. Thanks, I think. Can't quite decide.
Right. No, it's and I appreciate the advice and the direction that you have given me, and what you did in some ways, even when we weren't talking about it, it was kind of inspiring to say, okay, this can be done independent. Now you're doing it independent and with a radio group. Let's touch on that first because you moved, and I want to make sure people understand that you're still there on Inside Wisconsin. It's on WNFL radio in Green Bay, and you're there every day mornings, right?
This is where I've been actually the whole time, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the kind words. I love watching what you're doing, and I'm grateful that you and I got the chance to chat about doing what we're doing, because when we first launched Inside Wisconsin, it was to do it differently than they were doing on radio and TV then.
Right.
And so many since then have picked up what we were doing on Inside Wisconsin, which is ironic because radio picked up what we were doing here too, and we're off to the races. So this whole relationship started actually when you and I were working together at the game. I was doing fill-in work, and I had a relationship here in Green Bay at WNFL, and we were working on me doing the Inside Wisconsin show every day on the radio here. Then that whole new network thing happened, and I was put in a arranged marriage like the Old Testament. And ultimately, it just didn't work out business-wise, and that's okay. And so I made the personal decision to no longer offer my show to that network, but we are still live on WNFL on the radio here in Green Bay every day on 99.7. But then now we're streaming on all the platforms that we were supposed to be streaming on, right? So Inside Wisconsin's YouTube page and Facebook page, WNFL has a YouTube page and a Twitter page. So it is literally what we've been doing since the beginning, just slowed down to speed up a little bit.
That's where I was watching this morning with you got my guy Luddy, And then I haven't worked with Tommy Wirtz before, but I was on his former show just a couple of weeks ago when he was still there. So I know him just a little bit, but Luddy is a guy I've known for a long time. And what a great pairing to put you guys together. And I enjoyed the heck out of it since you guys, I mean, you're early, you're in your infancy of that trio of voices coming to you in the morning. And I enjoyed today's, even though I don't always agree with Tommy. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he's got a lot of takes and he will share all of them. All of them.
Yeah. Which is good. This is what this business is all about. How are you? Everything good?
Yeah, man. Everything's really good. But kids are great. Real quick, Luddy is behind the camera. Helped get all this set up. Can hear you. So he says hello and thanks, Mike.
Luddy's my guy. I mean, you want to talk about a grinder and a really smart dude and a good dude. Probably wasn't done right. He's one of many that weren't done right on the exit from iHeart. But I'm glad that he's with you. He's in a good spot, and he's a good dude. So
he's a great dude. Yeah, we're really glad to have him.
I'll talk to you later about him when he's not listening.
Deal. Take your headphones out, would you please, Nibble?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. No, thanks for asking about my family. My family's awesome. Having a driver now is something new. There's nothing that prepares you for that.
No.
We almost want them to fail.
As kids grow older, I know I've got 7 of them. As they grow older, you trade one set of concerns and worries for another. And I don't know if there's a bigger, other than leaving to go to college, I don't know that there's a bigger game changer than when you give your keys to your child and let them drive away. Because we know what the road can do, and we know what we did when we were young driving a car occasionally, right? So, yeah, that's a little nervy, isn't it?
Yeah, when we were taking him down to get his license in Appleton, my wife and I both went down, and he was a little cocky. He was like, Dad, I got this whole thing figured out. So he pulls away, and Amanda and I are like, listen, we don't want him to fail because we really need him to be a driver in our house. Yeah. That little shit needs to fail. So he didn't. He got his license, and then we got home, and he really, right away, like all kids do, like you and I both did, all right, I want to go to the store, Culver's. Yeah. And I was like, you know what, fine. Why don't you go buy us lunch for all the pain and suffering you're about to put us through? He pulled away, and I looked at my wife, and she's got tears, and I'm like, I wasn't ready for that. I didn't see that part coming.
Yeah. And then even that, the parking lots are the worst, right? I mean, you're thinking about trusting your 16-year-old with the keys to go park and even the drive-through, because the lanes can be a little narrow and their spatial awareness is developing at the wheel of a car. So I hope you had him go in, like not through the drive-through if he was going to Culver's or whatever. Anyways.
Yeah. He actually he works there, so that's the first place he wanted to go. He might have gone through the drive-through. Somebody, when we were talking about this on the air on the show, messaged in and said, teenage boys learn by bumping into things. And I'm like, that doesn't help.
It's not what we want.
Right.
Mike said, Mike weighs in, I've loved Trevor's platform and presentation, been glued to the podcast with John Anderson and an alliance with, I don't know what that is.
No idea.
Me either. All right. But thanks, Mike. So let me spend a little time on the Packers. We have, it is 2 weeks. In less than 2 weeks, they'll be in camp. This is the outrage season because this is the season of lists. And, Caleb Williams made ESPN.com's top 10 quarterbacks, and Jordan Love did not. So that has people outraged. But I want to skip past the outrage for a moment and just talk about what this season might lead to. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, and most are on the same side of trying to coach against history with Matt LaFleur. Only John Madden has gone past year 7 without getting to a Super Bowl and then getting to and winning one. So Matt LaFleur has not been to one, and there are doubters for him. I'm not one of them. But I do also understand, Trevor, I don't want to get your thoughts on this, as to whether he is, even though with an extension, if he is coaching for his job. To me, the NFL as a head coach is a year-to-year contract, even if there are extensions. And I certainly think that's the case in Green Bay. Do you?
I do. With the way that last season ended, I made a stupid comment live on the air in a fit of rage that he should be gone. When he signed his extension, I was the first person to go, okay, fine. I'm not running the ship. Let's see if we can run it back. But I did say this. If we win the Super Bowl this year with him in the same position as he was last year, I will physically eat prepared crow on the radio that day. Like that next, I don't want to. I mean, I want to, but I don't want to. But the reason I feel that way, and yes, I do feel like he's still coaching for his job, is because of the way those games ended last season when we had the lead. That's the opinion around here in Green Bay, is that unfortunately Matt can't quite push through the pressure of that moment. And so last year didn't matter how many points we had a lead of. There was a plausibility that it was going to be given up. And so as we go into this season, specifically the first, probably 6-ish weeks without Micah Parsons, he's going to show his hand there pretty quick. And if the conversation we've had is, if they get into the playoffs as a wild card and lose that first round, we think he could be gone.
Yeah, I've said that, Trevor. We're on the same page there. If they don't make the playoffs, he's gone. If they're in and they lose in the wild card round, he's gone. I wonder if everything else allows him to be safe. You know, if they have the bye and they play in the division round, or if they win a wild card game then lose in the division round, I don't know. But here's the difference to me, and you brought it up very deftly. It is a fourth quarter. He's got to coach in the fourth quarter like Caleb Williams played in the fourth quarter. All right, and it's just not Caleb. Caleb and Ben Johnson won the fourth quarter in Chicago all season long last year against whoever they played. And the Packers didn't, and specifically against that team. They lost in the fourth quarter. So this head coach, not just him, but his staff, and his players have to finish games this year like they didn't against Cleveland, like they didn't against the Bears multiple times, like they didn't against Denver. They got to be able to finish games, and if they can't finish games, then the end result, I think, is the coach won't be coaching games in Green Bay next year.
Mike, do you think of it this way too? I wonder who's coaching coach. Steve Jones, who is a wildly successful high school coach, is in the building and working directly with Matt, but Matt reports up to the president. I call it the love triangle. It's Goody, Russ Ball, and Matt all reporting up to now Ed Policy. But last year, with all due respect to Mark Murphy, that was who his boss was. I'm not sure that Matt's being coached on how to coach in those moments outside of a Steve Jones, which is great. He's a phenomenal coach himself and a motivational speaker and author and all those things. But I think if we're being honest, that I believe is the problem here in Green Bay. I believe that the love triangle situation where Matt doesn't report to Goody and Goody doesn't have final say over the whole shebang, I think that hurts. And you see that come out at the end of those games.
Yeah, and I do think that that there was another coach on a sideline that was supposed to be that guy that handled special teams that's no longer there. And I think he was, but I mean, all that matters is what happens. That's all you can be judged on. Coach has one statistic. It is wins and losses. That is the only thing. I'm not a big believer in quarterbacks having a win-loss record. I think coaches have a win-loss record. That goes twofold. It goes to the coach and it goes to the GM. They win and lose games. And the GM says, here's your roster. Now you got to go win and lose with these guys. And for that, it's a coaching stat. And when Green Bay didn't finish games, and it's a little bit misleading that they lost 5 in a row. I mean, they didn't play the last game of the regular season. So maybe you kind of kick that out. But there's no getting around. They had Denver beat and lost it. They had Chicago beat and lost it. They had Chicago beat again and lost it. And those things matter. So you got to find a way. And I was also curious. I was visiting with Aaron Nagler about this. He had a really interesting thought that I thought was, when I put more time into it, I thought is really dead on. We all talk about the return from injury from Micah Parsons. He thinks later rather than sooner on that they're going to be cautious, but we'll see. Tucker Kraft coming back is significant. Devontae Wyatt. But his biggest return from injury is Zach Tom, and he said Zach Tom is kind of an interesting story because we didn't consider him to be injured, and he certainly was. And his time not on the field is significant. And he's your best offensive lineman, but he plays right tackle. But if he's a stud, then we're going to pay attention to Jordan Morgan on the left side. But if Zach Tom's not healthy, that line is not in a good spot, period.
And that line needs to be in a good spot.
Yeah.
This is not a prove it year for Jordan Love. This is a, hey, dude, we have an expectation year for you to be the dude that we need you to be.
Right.
If he doesn't have the guys in front of him, he's going to be forced to scramble. And especially on that right side, which is where he's going to take his first step to scramble. If Zach Tom's not there, that's not going to work out well. And that's when he gets injured too in Jordan Love, when he has to scramble. If he could have some time in the pocket and actually develop a game there instead of constantly on the move, then I think this will be different. But you're right, Mike. Zach Tom has to be the guy that is there. Otherwise, I have questions.
So have you started the process to figure out how you would attain said crow or how it would be prepared? I mean, they don't sell it. It's not in the.
No, that's a wild bird. Yeah, it's the rat. Listen, it was a dumb thing to say, but I will do it if I absolutely have to. I had some friends that are in the hunting community reach out and go,
they'll provide.
We looked up recipes. We got you. Like this is not going to be that painful.
Right.
Let's all just hope we get there. Because if that's the case, then that means the Packers won the Super Bowl, and I think we have more celebrating to do than whining about having to take a bite out of something that I've never done, and nor will I ever do after that.
And is that the whole deal then, is just a bite of crow?
I will eat crow, yes. Eating means bite and digest crow. I did not say a whole crow.
One bite of crow. Like
we're gonna
at that point, would Luddy and Tommy Wirtz, like, would they measure it out? Is a bite minimum 2.5 ounces?
I'll own it. I will own it. It's going to be deep fried and seasoned to taste like a chicken tender. It's going to be awful, but I'll do it. I'll do it.
That's awesome. I've listened to some of the Brewers conversation too, as they enter, with just under 70 games to play in their season. In that, there's only 6 off days. So one of the biggest questions about this team is, there's a segment of the fan base, right, is already talk to me in October. I'm not in that. I've never been in that. I enjoy the journey. I think when you don't enjoy the journey, you're missing out on a lot as a fan of sports. If you're saying, hey, talk to me in January as a Packers fan, all that matters is what they do in the playoffs, then you've missed a whole journey. If you have the same concept on what the Brewers are doing, talk to me in October, because they haven't done it in October since 1982. And then I'm on a tangent here, but I always think of this, Trevor. Even in 1982, you're not old enough, but I am. In 1982, you know how many games they won to make it to the World Series in the postseason?
How many?
3.
Oh, yeah.
It was just the Brewers and California Angels in a best of 5. American League East winner, American League West winner. They played a best of 5, and the winner went to the World Series. So the Brewers won 3 games in the postseason that year to get the matchup against the Cardinals. Now it's so different. If you're not that bye, you play in that wild card round, then the division round, then the NLCS to get to the World Series. But for those people who are just going to jump ahead and say, talk to me in October, I think you miss a lot. And part of what the Brewers have to do in the second half, and I'm curious as to your view, they're going to have to go get a pitcher outside of Lance McCullers Jr. What if they don't, Trevor? Like, what's the reaction going to be if they don't? And part 2 to that, what is the reaction going to be if the Cubs do and the Brewers don't with a big name pitcher?
You said something there about October, as in talk to me in October. I want the Brewers to talk to me today so that we win in October. And that's where, to your point, I feel like the Brewers have to make a move at starting pitching, not just McCullers, but somebody else. And I believe that it is worth literally selling the farm. If there's ever been a year where we think we have the best chance to win the World Series, even through all of the injuries that we've had, and that's been the hardest part about the starting pitching. Miz has a clunky arm. Harrison has a bad forearm. Woody may never pitch again. We just got Logan Henderson back. Lost Quinn Priester. Well, there was our starting 5 last year.
Correct.
So none of those guys do we believe are at the top of their game as we sit in the middle of the season. if you go to hitting, well, we need a bat at third base. No, we don't need a bat at third base. Would we take one? Yes. But Joey Ortiz is the third best third baseman in the league in certain percentages.
Yeah.
So things are okay there. Relief pitching, well, if we have good starting pitching, it's not something that we have to worry about. And I think the reason we have to go and get a pitcher, and if we don't, and Chicago does, it means one of two things. Either we're unwilling to do what it needs to be done in order to win a World Series, or two, we're playing a chess match. And I kind of feel, Mike, like this season has shown a little strategery, I like to say, from the Brewers that we haven't seen in the past. Miz not starting because of a clunky arm, not pitching in the All-Star game, not being the first pitcher out of the gate to start the series against the Marlins, means I think they're taking it a little easy with him. Yeah. He's been the most dominant pitcher in baseball. Why wouldn't we want to trot him out there as often as we can? Yeah. I call it Blake Snellisms. Maybe we're catching on to this thing that we really do need these guys to be on the top of their game in October, which is all the more reason, like you just said, then go get someone else right now.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the go get someone else. I just want to add this in on Miz. He's pitched 111 innings this year. He went 129 in the regular season a year ago, AAA and Major League level. So they're going to be cautious with him, and rightfully so. If they're going to have a chance to win in October, he's got to take the ball in game one of the NLDS, NLCS, and World Series. And when he takes it in one, he's got to take it again in 5, right? But then you've got 2, 3, and 4 in between. You talk about selling the farm. There's a pitcher in Minnesota, Joe Ryan, who I think is as quality from what he puts out there right now. His ERA is 2.85 and his WHIP is 1.05. Luis Pena doesn't have a big well, he's got a tremendous upside, but people are worried because he's only played a couple of dozen games this year after he collapsed on the bench early in the year. Andrew Fisher was a star for Italy in the World Baseball Classic. He's approaching 30 home runs across high A and double A. And then you've got a Garrett Mitchell at your big league level. And I think if you put together a package that had Mitchell, because then Luis Lara is your everyday center fielder and your outfield is Churio, Lara, and Frelick. Garrett Mitchell is producing at a really high level. It's a risky move because if he's healthy, he can be great. He can be all-star material. But if you did a Pena, Fisher, Mitchell, there's nobody that's not available. And that is what I would describe as, you talked about selling the farm. That's a significant move, but you've got to go get a Tarek Skubal, a Michael Wacha, or a Joe Ryan, one of those types of guys. And I think those 3 are the top 3 on the market. You got to go get one of them. One of them needs to be in Milwaukee.
Do you think we can get that done without Garrett Mitchell? There's a lot of prospects in the farm system that you just rattled off, and even a few that we've brought up this year.
Sure.
Not horribly impressed by Cooper Pratt just yet, but I think they're going to be patient with him.
Yeah.
Man, it's so good to see Garrett Mitchell be doing so well and so finally healthy. And I know that Jordan Walker was in that exact same draft, and I believe he was the next pick after the Brewers picked Garrett Mitchell, or one before. I'm not sure how that shook out. I also think it's a year to sell the farm because we really don't know what this CBA looks like after December, and there may not be baseball. So if there was ever a time when the little engine that could go all in to get it done before everything changes, then I think this is probably the year. So to your point, I would love to go get a starting pitcher that is defined and healthy, because look at the rotation then.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you stand on Brandon Woodruff. I feel terrible for the man. I think he's done as well.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money that got eaten up in a guy that we didn't necessarily, I don't know. When they gave him that money, Mike, I was like, you sure? Like that?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. And I think there's a love affair with him and who he is and who he will continue to be, just maybe not as a pitcher in Major League Baseball. I think the Brewers have 3 prospects that are untouchable. 2 of them are with your big league club. You're not dealing Cooper Pratt, you're not dealing Luis Lara, and you're not dealing Jesus Madej. Those 3 are untouchable, I think, from a prospect standpoint. Anybody else could go. And I hope they do. I was talking to Vinny about this yesterday, And Vinny he's a scout, right, at his core. So he's truly a baseball guy. He's still a fan, but he's truly a baseball guy. And he said, go get Skubal. Go get Tarek Skubal. I don't know that it's probable, but man, I love Matt Arnold. I hope that you go ahead and spark that clubhouse and spark the fan base by getting that dude. I think people would love Joe Ryan too. They just don't know him as well.
Right.
But
as long as whatever the move that they make isn't a clubhouse disaster move like Josh Hader was when they were in first place and blew the thing up inside.
And you know who that would be? It would be if they traded Sal Frelick, who a month ago I thought, Frelick just got hot. Maybe you move him. And then I was having that conversation with Vinny and some others, and they said, he's the heartbeat. He defines who this team is. You want to shake up in a not positive way that clubhouse? Because otherwise, if he's not that guy, he'd be top of my list because he does some things that you love, but there are a lot of times when he can't, the barrel of the bat doesn't find the ball enough for him. But I think he would be that guy. If they dealt him, that would be the problem. And so I don't think they will. That's why I brought up Garrett Mitchell.
Yeah, God, I don't want to lose him, but Murph is really good at getting really good guys to do really incredible things, whether they're supposed to on paper or not. Now add in the pitching lab and take a guy like Skubal, who's a clear number one Cy Young Award winner, and put him in the pitching lab with the Brewers.
Yeah.
And then go.
For the next 3 months, let Chris Hook and Jim Henderson work with him.
Exactly.
Those guys are horse whisperers with pitchers. That's what they do. How long have you been in Green Bay? Is this a lifetime home?
No, it is not. I actually grew up in Johnson Creek, Jefferson area.
Oh, that's right.
Between Madison and Milwaukee.
Yeah, we talked about Creek and Crick.
Yep, Crick. You heard it right.
Yep.
We've lived here 20 years this year. Okay. This is home now. And our boys were born here and they're going to school here and we will forever live here. We're going to follow. If our boys leave, we're leaving. We're going to follow them. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this community, the Green Bay area, De Pere is where we've settled. Mike, there's nothing like it in the state.
I know.
It feels like Crick, yet with everything to do. And that football stadium down the road.
Right. I grew up in Appleton and I say this a lot to people, but I think you can attest to it. So I've lived in Madison essentially nonstop since 1988. And here the Packers are centric to the state, no matter where you are in the state. Then here, the Badgers are centric. And I work for Badger Connect. I'm connected to the university and their athletics program. What I think a lot of people here sometimes fail to understand is that their relevance in the Fox River Valley, northern Wisconsin, southeast Wisconsin, is when they're middling, nobody cares. When they're terrible, they care. And when they're really good, they care. But I'm talking about really good.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the time, Wisconsin Badger athletics can sadly be a bit anonymous. Is that you've lived there a long time? Do you find that a little bit among the people you're around?
Did you see in the news that Doug Gottlieb figured out how to get Wisconsin and Marquette to come here to Green Bay to the Resch Center to play the GB men's team in exhibition games? Do you see that?
Oh, no, I did not.
October 15th is the date that the Wisconsin men's basketball team will be here in Green Bay for the first time in, I believe, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
The last time they played here was a regular season game. And ironically, GB won that game, which is probably why they haven't been back in a regular season or even in an exhibition for so long. I bring that up because that game at the Resch on October 15th, regardless of its meaning, will be sold out.
Yes.
That game 20 years ago or whatever it was absolutely sold out at the Resch Center. There are Badgers fans here.
Yes.
And when the Badgers, to your point, do well, they come out in droves.
Yeah.
We are actually hosting here at WNFL and inside Wisconsin, along with the other stations in the building, the big pep rally that's downtown on Broadway for Wisconsin leading up to their game against Notre Dame at Lambeau.
Yeah.
That will be a sea of red. And everyone here, especially in the what I call the Brown County area, that is a UW alum, is down there. They are the ones that help plan it. So absolutely, Mike, there are Badgers fans here, but that's not a natural conversation.
Yeah.
The natural conversation is obviously the football team.
Right. And I think, and I've said this for as long as I've had a microphone in front of me, I think the state basketball fans would love the annual get-together in Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay of the Panthers, Marquette, Green Bay, and Wisconsin. And I think all basketball fans would love it. And the problem has been money, greed at some level, because they have never figured out how to share the proceeds, how to make it work. But all you got to do is rotate, have 2 years in Milwaukee, 1 year in Madison, 1 year in Green Bay, and just rotate that through. Can you imagine the thrill of that? And you couldn't get a ticket, right?
No, especially if they didn't have to clear the arena after the first game.
Right.
So Milwaukee and Green Bay play the first game. Everybody that was interested in that will be there for that. And then nobody has to leave. The next game starts just like a tournament game.
Well, now you've given somebody's money away, Trevor.
Well, I know that's the hardest part about it, right? But when they do that at Fiserv, when there's a Marquette game during the day and then a Bucks game at night, 2 years in a row now, my son Rhodey and I have gone down there for that day.
Right.
And it's a blast from a basketball perspective.
Yeah.
Up here in Green Bay, October 15th is Wisconsin at GB. Then the 18th is the Cowboys game here at Lambeau.
Yeah.
The 19th is Marquette at the Resch Center.
There you go.
That's a good span.
That's a week.
Yeah.
That's a good 5-day run.
And I know you don't want to talk about October, but there could be a Brewer playoff game that falls in there as well. We'll see.
There could. And I think one of the biggest, and then I'll let you go after this, but one of the biggest elements of the final 70 games for the Brewers is that they desperately need to be the 1 or 2 seed. I mean, all teams want that, but to not have to play in that wild card round is significant, especially with a young, not pitched 200 plus inning pitching staff, because that's a uncharted territory for Miz or Harrison. And when we talk about the bullpen, if they go ahead and add a pitcher, then Drone or Sproat or Gasser falls into middle relief. And that's good, because that allows you to be more careful with what you do with Ashby and McGill and Uribe, right? I mean, that allows that opportunity. There's so many moving parts here. The next 2 weeks for Matt Arnold are going to be significant.
I really like momentum in baseball, though. And so we've seen it in the NFL where the team that takes that bye and sits their starters that last week, they don't necessarily come out guns a-blazing per se.
Yeah.
With the Brewers, and especially with their young team, I think if they get a good thing going and get those guys excited, then do I want them to have the 1 or the 2? Yeah. But I don't necessarily think their chances are lowered if they indeed have to play that first round.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of fun in this run down the stretch. Hey, thanks for doing this on relatively short notice. I appreciate you saying yes. I love what you do and the guys you're around, in particular Luddy. I mean, tell Tommy he'll earn my love.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking me on, Mike. And hey, by the way, we've both been in this business a long time. I got my first job in radio when I was 15 years old. I'm 43. Yeah. There's not been a soul that I've come across in this business that didn't have amazing things to say about Mike Heller. So thanks for the inspiration that you've given me and some of the coaching. We've had conversations, and I'm really glad to see that I Love Mondays, even on a Friday, is doing so well.
Yeah, and today's a Bourbon Friday. So
oh yeah, hold on, don't get rid of me yet. I need to know. Oh, Woodford.
So it's a Woodford. I got it. I was on the Bourbon Trail last week, so I got this at Woodford Reserve, and it's one that finishes in a cab barrel, Cabernet Sauvignon. So I haven't tasted it yet because we didn't taste this when we were there. But I like finishing barrels. It's why I like J. Henry that finishes in a cognac cask. It's called Bellefontaine. But I like finishing barrels. I like toasted barrels. So I'm gonna open this up and finish the show with it today. And talk a little bit about it.
This past weekend, I won an empty bourbon barrel, like for decoration. I'm like, awesome. I put all my raffle tickets in there. I won it. This is fantastic. Everybody wants to win a bourbon barrel until you have one of those damn things. Now, what do I do with it? It's heavy as hell. Those rings fall off of it.
Great. Yeah, you're gonna now you have to have the money, spend the money to have it finished and stained and make it look pretty.
Was unaware of that.
We've done one outside our front door at our entrance, but it weathers. And Mike doesn't fix stuff. Mike calls people to fix stuff.
So does Trevor.
Yeah.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being part of it. I appreciate it. I'll keep watching what you do, and thanks for being part of what we're doing.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.